Evangelion.
It seems like everyone, regardless of if they're into anime or not, at least has a faint understanding of the 1995 show Neon Genesis Evangelion. If it's not for the vivid imagery that has bled itself into our cultural zeitgeist, it's things like Shinji Get in the Robot. And it's personally a show that I love. I watched it for the first time 2 years ago when I was 21, and despite being about a bunch of 14-year-olds who are stuffed inside of these giant mechs and have to fight off these hostile invaders called angels, it hit me in this uniquely profound, impactful way, and has sort of lingered on my brain ever since. Like, I've watched it a bunch of times, forced friends to, bought art, bought plushies, read the manga, the remake movies, played some of the games, my birthday cake was Evangelion themed, sung the songs at karaoke twice, and I even changed my profile on Steam to Peon Penis's P-Evangelion. Get it? But what I maybe find the most puzzling is why? I've seen a lot of great shows or games or movies or plays or whatever, yet this one never escapes me. It's always there, lurking. And I don't think I'm the only one. In the almost 30 years since Evangelion has released, it has firmly planted itself a spot in our pop culture, refusing to go away and living on endlessly. From other works it has inspired, to copycats, to remakes, to cosplay, to analysis on its story and themes, to so many memes, to accounts posting screenshots of the show daily, to fanfiction, to tattoos, to this picture I always see of this woman in her underwear watching the show. No, why are you that close to the TV? Go back up from the screen! To retro video games, to newly announced video games, to pachinko machines, to FRM drunkenly explaining the entire plot of Evangelion with a d down my throat. Very cute slideshow included. Follow along. Throat. Unironic explanation. Not silly. Post. Trigger warning. Story relevant talk of suicide, murder, Fanta, genocide, ascension to godhood. I mean, this anime just won't die. Is it the vast story, the interesting characters, the majestic music, the beautiful pre-digital hand-drawn animation, the penguin? Why do people still care about this show? Well, I am going to get to the bottom of it. I am going to get into the robot, Shinji, and the robot is like the entire world of Evangelion. And when I come out the other end, I'm gonna give you the answer, the definitive answer. Why is everyone so obsessed with Evangelion? And look, this video took so long to make that I even grew a beard, and I know what you're all thinking. Yes, God, I'll shave it. Oh my God, you're so rude. Yes, I'm dressed as Shinji now. And without further ado, let's begin with Evangelion. I sort of don't know where to begin. There is just so much to this show and why people love it that it can be an overwhelming mountain to tackle. So I think I'm just going to start from the start with the delightfully catchy. As this incredible tune blasts our ears, it gives us these incredible sequences of imagery that before we know it perfectly capture the tone of the show. It begins with characters wistfully looking for answers amidst open skies, with other characters or other versions of themselves appearing in silhouettes, as if they are not able to be understood by one another or themselves. A robot, and then a quick flash of all our major characters before what can only be described as an overwhelming amount of information, characters, lore, explosions, and text thrown in front of our face. Either 101, Tokyo 3, all these prototype models, 0 explosions, Impact, Anno, Misato, what is going on? I think people often give the credit to the opening solely for this song, which is incredible, but the choice of visuals, the posing of a hero, the flash of information, it perfectly articulates what this show is and will be before you've even started the first episode proper. Evangelion is this giant, larger-than-life narrative with these incredibly nuanced characters, and at times will throw this flurry of information at you in this incredibly uniquely overwhelming way, whilst always revolving around this boy. This intro perfectly captures that all in a 90-second chunk. Not to glaze so hard before we even enter the first episode proper, but it's just really good. Evangelion has a bit of a setup to its world, but cleverly it instead starts right in the action. The year is 2015, which was 20 years in the future when this first came out, and is now 10 years ago. Isn't it weird how time works? We hear the sound of a helicopter over the ocean, which then reveals itself to be a sunken city. One full of abandoned offices and streets that a giant monster begins to swim through. A monster we know is a threat because of the wall of artillery waiting for its approach. As a PA voice tells the citizens to evacuate, we see empty abandoned streets intercepted only by a lone blue car, driven by a woman looking for a boy named Shinji Ikari. This is our main protagonist, Shinji. The guy I'm dressed as. He's about as blank as you can get. Brown hair, wearing a simple white shirt and pants. He's just an ordinary 14-year-old like we all once were. And he's come to this city to be picked up by this woman who sent him a very provocative postcard. Chill, he's like 14, big dog. Realizing he's run out of time to meet this woman, he decides to leave for an evacuation shelter, but not before catching a glimpse of a girl in the distance. One who seems to disappear in the blink of an eye, which he can't even ponder because a giant explosion goes off and Shinji sees that giant monster called an angel attacking the city. The military shoot but to no avail as Shinji is almost crushed by the wreckage of a helicopter before out of nowhere the woman he's been waiting for rushes in to save the day. This is Misato. She worked for a secret government operation called NEF and is trying to transport Shinji to the headquarters. She also is very cool, very beautiful, very nifty, and exudes this perfect image. But let's just put a pin in that because the angel continues its destructive route of the city as the two drive off just in the nick of time. This is the world of Evangelion. Ordinary, average people living in the aftermath of a dire apocalyptic event as a brand new terror is unleashed upon them. The show eventually does tell you all the secrets to its world and why it's in a post-apocalyptic state and what all the creatures are and blah blah blah. But the way it introduces us to this world through mostly visual storytelling is so brilliantly well done and is something I think is maybe undersung a little. Explosions! The military is setting 1,000,000 missiles and a half and then a nuke to try and destroy this angel. As we keep cutting back and forth between the frantically panicked military men, the angel which is horrifyingly surviving all of the attacks, and this mysterious looking man whose every facet of his expression is shielded from us. But hey, I'm sure he's not important, it's all good. Minor character, probably. It all makes you wonder, what does our protagonist Shinji have to do with all this? Well, that mysterious man knows missiles won't make a difference against the creature, and once given command over the operation, sets out to use what is called an Evangelion, a giant pilotable robot that is humanity's only chance to defeat these new threats. And who is to pilot it? Oh, Shinji! Get in the robot, Shinji! It's time! But that man who runs the Evangelion project and NEF, yeah, he's also Shinji's dad. What I think is so interesting about this show is that, unlike other mech-based shows, or anything about a young hero really, it's that this 14-year-old boy does not represent a power fantasy for us the viewer to get into a robot and kick some alien ass. Shinji flat out refuses to pilot the robot. He hasn't seen his dad in years, ever since he abandoned him as a child, and suddenly out of nowhere he calls for Shinji and expects him to get in this giant robot and fight this monster? There's a tragic feeling to the scene as these adults all debate with each other on the issue at hand, all while this young boy struggles with the emotional heartbreak of betrayal from his father, which he repels against by refusing to pilot the Eva. Thrust into an impossible situation, this is when Misato leans down to Shinji, meeting him at his level and says, which Shinji replies once again with, there's a beat. And then his father calls upon a girl called Rei to pilot the Eva instead, all while Shinji grapples with a thought that we are seeing for the first time, but he undoubtedly has had many a time before. Suddenly, a girl bandaged in a hospital bed is rushed into the room. Wincing in pain and collapsing over, Shinji sees the immediate consequence of deciding to run away. But they're out of time as the angel shoots a blast of energy at the headquarters, and in a mysterious stroke of luck, the restrained, deactivated robot moves its hand to protect Shinji. With the hurt, bleeding girl in his arms, Shinji mutters to himself. Over and over again before deciding he will be the pilot. And then the rest of the episode plays out. Shinji enters the entry plug for Evangelion Unit 1, and after very little preparation, Shinji is launched up to the battle to a triumphant brass-filled score. He hits the surface, the Ava's head locks up as it makes its entrance, and then Misato pleads. Boom, to be continued. It's already peak. It's a masterpiece! Evangelion's first episode is, I think, extraordinary. It flawlessly sets up the greater world and context of the show, establishes this big cast of characters who seem to have so much lingering under the surface, has just some gorgeously drawn shots and bits of animation that also do so much of the storytelling, and even teases us with some cool mech stuff. And as much as the show is about so much more than just cool mech stuff, there is some really cool mech stuff in here. But what I think is most well done is how it sets up the conflict between Shinji and his father. A cruel, dismissive man who only cares about his son's usefulness to achieve some goal, in juxtaposition to a son who is clearly just craving some connection with his father. I think it's perfectly reasonable that Shinji freaks out and refuses to pilot the Eva, but for a lot of people, I think this is where the split on perception of Shinji starts. Leave the bubble of the show, and the popular opinion of the character is that he's a whiny little bitch, and if they were in his position at his age, they would have been so pumped to get in a giant robot and kill a monster. And that is precisely why I think Shinji is so interesting. He is, in his own words, a pathetic, weak, unskilled coward who throughout the show often fails to do things set out before him with massive consequences to those around him. And yet, he is so compelling to watch and I want nothing more than to root for him. Like at the start of episode 2, titled The Beast, we open right where we left off. Shinji is inside of Unit 1 and takes his first steps. One step at a time and another until, oops, you big idiot, you fell over! And as the angel comes closer, Shinji gets his ass whooped. It's not a very heroic first foray. One of the coolest parts about Evangelion is the way the pilots are synchronized with their Eva units, which amongst many things makes them feel the same pain that their Evas experience. If the Eva gets shot, the pilot feels it. If their arm is broken, they feel it. If they stub their toe, yeah, they feel it. It's this great way to get you to care about the little pilot inside the giant invincible mech, because the shared pain means that there are stakes for them. And after having his skull repeatedly shot at, it makes you wince along with the pain he is feeling, which only continues as he is shot repeatedly, slammed against a wall, and then we cut to a hospital. Ripped right out of the action, feeling just as disorientated as Shinji, we hear him say, The rest of this episode is about Shinji facing the new unknown, the new ceiling within the new city, full of new people, and how he is to insert himself into all of that, as well as him dealing with the traumatic aftermath of surviving a battle that we, the audience, still don't know the end of. Quickly after his dismissal from hospital, Misato steps in when she hears that Shinji is going to be sent to live alone and decides to move him into her apartment. No one thought you would. Should we be worried? These first 4 episodes, aside from being the general setup for the show, are really about the relationship between Shinji and Misato. In episode 1, Angel Attack, when they meet, she is a super confident, cool, sexy woman who is able to drive in the nick of time to save him and deliver him to where he needs to go. In contrast, Shinji is, well, Shinji. Meek, quiet, and when confronted with something difficult, cowardly. But very cleverly, the show is constantly drawing a parallel between the two, having them often mirror one another. It starts really early on, during the car ride down to Shinji meeting with his father, where Misato says,
そっか、苦手なのね、お父さんが。私と同じね。
And so in episode 2, when Misato decides to have Shinji live with her, although we don't have all the evidence by this point, I can't help but see it as Misato looking at Shinji and seeing a younger version of herself in him. And if you keep that in mind, it completely changes their dynamic and makes every interaction super interesting. At the start of their domestic adventures, it seems all happy and dandy. Her professional, cool attitude quickly disappears as the fun, sloppy, drunk persona comes forth. It's a great contrast that challenges the polite and tidy Shinji. After dinner, Shinji escapes to the bath before meeting a wacky penguin. Whoa! No, seriously, okay, really quick. Why is there a penguin here? Why is Pen in this show? Like, every episode it will cut to him and he's just chilling. Like, sometimes they cut to him like he's the main character and just like, Big Dog, who are you? And you know what? I'll say it. I'm a Pen hater. As Shinji exits away into the bath, the first moment the two have had without each other all night, Misato wonders to herself.
ちとわざとらしくはしゃぎすぎたかしら。 見透かされてるのはこっちかもね。
You see, a lot of Misato's character throughout the show is which face she puts on for which people and why. We already saw this actually in the first minutes of the show when she gave Shinji a horny postcard to motivate him to come meet her. And it's something that evolves dramatically throughout the show, especially in relation to Shinji, who at the moment she, I think genuinely, does want to care for and make happy, even if it is for her selfish reflection and because it is a part of her job to make him operational. Earlier, before they arrived home, she took him to see the city as it transforms at night.
そして、あなたが守った街。
But as Shinji lies awake restless in his bed, escaping into his S-Stat Walkman, he can't help but think of how, despite Misato's best efforts, he sees nothing but another ceiling he doesn't know. A city that he doesn't recognize, a feeling of being out of place. Why is he here? Suddenly, we cut to the conclusion of the fight at the start of the episode, where Shinji is just getting his ass handed to him before seemingly out of nowhere in his frozen state, the Eva reactivates. The scientists at NERV freak out as they claim that it's gone berserk. Ooh, that's probably not good. And in the screams of its madness and rampage against the angel, it's the first time we see the Evangelions as what they really are. Horrifying. Things to be deathly frightened by. Which is echoed by Shinji, who remembers looking into the living eye of what is supposed to be a robot. And And then we hear the first of many of Shinji's screams. And back to his room, staring at the ceiling. Misato tries to artificially cheer him up once more by saying,
あなたは人に褒められる立派なことをしたのよ。胸を張っていいわ。
But the horror has already cemented itself upon Shinji. I've been really nervous to make this video because Evangelion is kinda dense. There's just a lot to it, and a lot of it is left up to interpretation, and all of that can lead to the show sometimes feeling confusing. And because of the nature of the show, there's just like a lot of misinformation that's been around for the last 3 decades or so. And so you have myths and false truths that are just sort of presented and accepted as fact. But on the other hand, through the fog of its overarching story and overwhelming visuals, Evangelion is sometimes very, very clear about what its message is. Take episode 3, A Transfer, for example. On a phone call between Misato and Ritsuko, the head scientist at NEF, Misato confesses that she thinks Shinji hasn't made any friends since moving to his new school. Ritsuko replies by asking if she knows about the hedgehog's dilemma, how hedgehogs have a hard time sharing warmth with other hedgehogs because of the spikes all around their body, and so the closer they get to one another, the more they hurt each other. And she then comments that people are also like that. If you ignore everything else about the show, or the plot, or the other characters, and just keep the hedgehog's dilemma in mind, you'll find it's this continuous thread that connects not only Shinji and Misato, but Shinji and everyone, and in a lot of cases, everyone and everyone, which starts right here in this episode where, yeah, Misato was right, Shinji has no friends. In class, he gets a moment of popularity when everyone finds out he is the Evangelion pilot, but it's all artificial interest. No one really cares about him. In fact, one guy, Toji Suzuhara, punches him into the ground because his sister was hurt by collateral damage Shinji caused in the previous episode. If this was a story about a cocky and egotistical brave hero, this would be a great moment of humanity, realizing the stakes that come along with piloting such a horrid thing. But instead, it's comeuppance to a guy who doesn't even want to be doing it in the first place. This punch only sends Shinji further down the hole of his mental spiraling, which comes to fruition during another angel attack. Surprise, there was more than one! And midway through the battle, Shinji has to let these 2 classmates into the robot with him. Long story short, basically, this one is really into Avas, it's like his hyperfixation, and then after a piss, they decided to go see one instead of being in the evacuation shelter, and now they're in one. Okay? The details don't matter. After he successfully saved them, Shinji begins denying Misato's orders to retreat and becomes hell-bent on killing the angel in front of him. Toji and Kensuke get to see what we are seeing for the second time. It's not glamorous or heroic to pilot these things. It's horrifying. In episode 4, called Hedgehog's Dilemma, oh hey, it came around. We see Misato going off at Shinji for disobeying her orders and not retreating. But Shinji's already gone into defense mode. He puts up a wall. He just says yes, yes, yes ma'am. He doesn't really care if he dies or not. For Shinji, it's easy at times of weakness to just go into a daze, go into autopilot mode and do what everyone else tells him to do, which Misato instantly calls him out on. And this anger she is throwing at him isn't coming purely from her role as his boss. As we hear from her later in the episode, she cares about Shinji at a closer level than that.
あの子にとってエヴァに乗ることが苦痛でしかないのなら、もう乗らない方がいいわ。
So already with Shinji and Misato, you've got this super interesting dynamic where you have this woman who, under her many facades of a job, has this empathy for this boy's life, who then steps into this pseudo-maternal role for him as he lives at her house. But the two have to navigate this bizarre relationship that is part work-based, part family-based, part... But the two of them deep down know that the closer that they get to one another, the more they are going to hurt each other. Hedgehog's dilemma. And maybe that is why, after his complacent days wears off, Shinji runs away. A big chunk of this episode follows the depressed Shinji as he lifelessly sits on a train car, having the world pass around him as he escapes into the tape of his cassette player. He walks through city streets that burn red as the unfamiliarity of his life begins to suffocate him until he runs further and further away. The only thing that breaks him out of his trance is at the movie theater, when he sees a couple beginning to get intimate. The one thing Shinji is terrified of doing. Getting close to another person. In any shape or form, he must feel so pathetic.
Let's pause for a second. I thought this was a cool show about a boy fighting in a mech, and at some point a Hispanic girl comes along and wishes me a happy Thursday. Why all this imagery about depression and our main hero running away?
Well, let's take a step back and introduce the creator of Evangelion, Hideaki Anno. Before Evangelion, he worked on a couple of things, one of the most impressive being Studio Ghibli's Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, where he just rocked up to the studio after they were short on animators, and his drawings impressed Miyazaki so much, he just gave him a job. Nice one. One of the shows Anno created later on was called Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, which was a stressful time all around since Gainax, the studio Anno worked for, were handed the show down from an NHK and they didn't even own the rights to the show, plus the company ended up losing 80 million yen from the production. And then the next project Anno was working on, Uru and Blue, just sort of fell apart. And it's not to say that these two things were the only factor, but Anno fell into a depression for a few years in the early 90s. When the proposal for a new TV anime came about, Anno was really interested in exploring the idea of not running away. And so the mixture of that thematic idea as well as Anno's previous mental state is mightily important context as to why Evangelion is the way that it is. I promise the cool mech stuff is important and yeah, it's cool to look at, but I think the reason the show is so interesting is because just as much importance is put on the introspective thoughts of these characters. The first time I watched this show, I saw Shinji lay lifelessly in bed, escaping into the music in his ears, or walking city streets in an almost trance, idly just doing what the people around him told him to do. And I went, oh my god, I've done that. I remember really specifically when I was 19, and for reference for you guys, that was like this era of Snugboy. It was the middle of the pandemic, I had just moved to a city I didn't know, I lived in a high-rise apartment, and I had this job that I hated. And I came home from work one day, and I just laid on the ground and stared at the ceiling for, I don't know, like an hour, and then at some point I went, oh my god, I've got way too much stuff to be doing right now, I can't be sad, and I got up and went about my evening. But I tell you that story as context for why these first few episodes hit so hard and why I think I instantly latched on to Shinji. If you've been unlucky enough to see your past actions reflected in these first few episodes, I think it can be this natural reaction to want to root for this guy, to give out a hand and tell him it's going to be okay. And despite the depressive nature of the episode, it's kind of beautiful in its quietness. Beautifully painted landscapes fill the frame as we see Shinji aimlessly wander through them, lost in thoughts we are not privy to. One of my favorite parts of the episode is later on when Nerf has caught Shinji and he is brought into a detainment cell of sorts and Misato confronts him. The two are split by this beam of light, with Shinji alone in the darkness and Misato as far away from him in the frame as possible, but with this binding beam of light coming from behind her that just doesn't quite reach him. He asks Misato if she is going to scold him for running away the last few days, and after no response, he says,
当然ですよね。美里さんは他人なんだから。
It cuts to Misato, but she's bathed almost entirely in silhouette, so we can't truly see how these words affected her, but I think it pisses her off. Because as Shinji begins to explain how he'll keep being a pilot because that is what everyone expects him to do, she snaps. Like a genuine mother or an older sister or any type of role model, Misato drops all her facades and just chastises Shinji. She tells him what others think doesn't matter and to forget about the Avas and go back to his old life. It's an outburst that can seem to come out of nowhere and clearly jostles Shinji. But remember what I said earlier about parallels. The more we learn about Misato throughout the series, the clearer it becomes that she sort of sees herself in Shinji. And to see someone younger than you acting in a way that you used to, that embarrasses you and something you've already grown from, it can be hard to see it reflected right in your face again. The episode ends with Shinji ready to depart on the train. Back at HQ, something finally clicks with Misato. Shinji is the way he is because he doesn't know how to express his feelings. And so she rushes off to the train to see him, just missing it as the train departs. She looks glum before turning around to realize he's still here. And Shinji is also in shock that Misato came to see him off. In this 32-second long wide shot of these two staring at each other, you can only guess as to what they're thinking. About each other, about themselves. And I think it's this beautifully lovely ending to the episode. Shinji decides to not run away, despite his fears of the inevitable pain that comes with getting close to someone. And Misato, even if just a little bit, begins to understand who Shinji is. It's very heartwarming when, in an almost Japanese cliche, Shinji says,
ただいま。
to Misato's response of,
おかえりなさい。
I've spent so much time on these first 4 episodes, but I just think they're such a great introduction to the show. It spells out this unique tone and atmosphere with this fascination on the mental psyche, which is all fueled by these very layered, interesting characters, all set in this post-apocalyptic world with these mysterious, horrifying mechanical robots and these brilliantly designed monsters. And it's all brilliantly brought to life in this pre-digital hand-drawn animation, and it's just so good.
Evangelion is a beautiful looking show. There are so many shots that just have the fucking sauce, both in these first 4 episodes as well as throughout the entire series. One thing that becomes a staple of its visual design is silhouettes, which apart from being raw as hell, also let you mask what a character is thinking or reacting to, and also saves a lot of money!
It's a well-known fact that Evangelion ran out of money, which actually means that it ran out of time. It's not like you're paying actors and a crew to be on a location all day as you're competing against the sun. It's more like how many animators do you have and how many shots need to be done, and do you have enough animators to get it done by the deadline. But despite this, all throughout the series they cut corners in such clever ways.
Like that 30-second hold on Shinji and Misato at the end of episode 4. In the back of your mind, it's like, yeah, they just saved themselves having to draw 720 unique pictures for the episode. But they make it a purposeful hold. It has intention and creates a tension and curiosity in the viewer about how these two, who have been butting heads for the last 2 episodes, are going to reach out after their last-minute spur to be together again.
And something I love about Evangelion is how it tells its story through the visuals, which sounds so fucking obvious if you've ever seen a movie before, but it's something I think is so rare in TV anime. And that is not the fault of the very talented, very overworked Japanese animators who have such little time to make an episode that is usually already visually planned out from the manga that they are adapting. But to me, I just feel like a lot of TV anime feels very directorially bland. Until one sequence where all the money and time was put in and it moves so wildly and fluidly, but without really saying anything. I think it's why in general I just prefer watching anime films. When you've got a film and a bit more of a budget and usually a singular creative vision through its director, you get shots with intention, frames that feel purposeful, animation that reflects the humanity of a story.
All of that is a very fancy and wanky way to say that Evangelion has such a strong directorial vision. All throughout the series you're getting these shots that are trying to say something, even if it's as simple as the disconnected father figure being high above and far away, looking down upon the abandoned son who will never be able to close the distance emotionally. Or Misato, a powerful, confident, authoritative figure taking the reins on Shinji's living situation while he meekly and pathetically cowers small in the back of the shot. Or Shinji at the door of his new home, a place he's apprehensive to enter, hesitating before taking the first step into a new life. Shinji in his depressive state sitting on the side of a mountain, or all of the just beautiful shots of the city or nature that cement what this world is to the viewers. Or even for visual gags, you think she's gonna show us his penis, but haha, nope, it's a candle! Get candled, idiot!
All throughout the show, the frame is just littered with this incredible and creative cinematography, all painted and drawn in this incredible way, and it just is so good. At its most bland and basic, Evangelion still has such a strong visual identity, which I think can also be attributed to just how they used to make anime back in the day. I can't draw a stick figure to save my life, which I know is a sentence artists hate to hear, but it's true. And it makes me appreciate every single thing I'm seeing on the screen tenfold. Every cool shot, every character, every building, every shape, every color, every line was painstakingly created by an artist onto a piece of paper or an animation cell and then shot onto film and then displayed 24 times a second, and it's just magical. I really think pre-digital animation is just the closest form of magic we have in real life. Artists draw these characters and bring them to life with nothing but a pencil or a pen. Like, isn't that so cool? And that's not to discredit hand-drawn animators nowadays who do it all on tablets and computers, because I understand that requires just as much of a mammoth amount of talent and skill too. But I think because in my head, I better understand how you could animate on a computer. Like, I can see the Photoshop layers in my mind, but I still, all these years later, don't really understand how they animated like this. It just blows my mind. And so anytime I see a cool shot, it not only works as a visual feast, but it also just sits on my retina as I ask myself, how did they do that? And sometimes it hits the trifecta by telling us something about a character or moving the story along, and just visually, Evangelion is a treat and a half.
And it's so cool that this is done by actual artists and not a computer that is burning down small villages in the Amazon. And if it's not for the storytelling, sometimes shit just looks so cool. All the Eva fights are just such a delight to watch. Yeah, enough of that boring human emotion shit. Boo, get that out of here. From the way the Eva launches up with the sketch marks skirting around Shinji, to the way it gets its ass totally pummeled. And the design of Eva Unit 1 is just, oh, it's so cool. The purple and green accent the armor so boldly, and the way its unicorn cone spike comes out of its head, it's just such a great memorable design. And all the Evas look so cool, but also so horrifying. And I'm such a big fan of the way that they play with scale. Because when you're in the middle of a fight in a big city, it's hard to remember sometimes that they're 100 meters tall. So I love in the holding bay how the platform is positioned so that they're eye level with them, like it's staring right at them, and how that affects all the characters in different ways. And every time you're in a battle, it's just so cool to see all the different bits of UI and menus Shinji and the scientists at Nev use. This is such a good show if you're a nerd for fictional user interfaces. There's alerts and errors popping up every 5 seconds. They've got crazy graphs. They're all just punching keyboards a million miles per hour. There's this giant holographic map that I don't think they ever use. What is the point of this thing? Can I put my Switch 2 on it? And sorry to skip ahead, but there's an episode later on where they get hacked and nothing happens except a computer goes and then they win at the last second, and God, it's so sick. And now that I've talked all my favorite visual stuff about the show, let's take a look at some of my favorite shots. Ooh, ah, wow. Those sure were some shots from Evangelion. Okay, I actually don't really know where to go from here. I don't want to do an episode by episode recap because that would be boring, but I don't really know what to talk about. And it's hard to talk about everything without sort of just touching on all the episodes anyway, but I don't worry, I'll figure it out. I don't need anyone else's help. Okay, let me start with this then. The first couple of episodes aren't just about Shinji and Misato and the penguin. There's also this blue-haired mystery girl, Rei. Apart from the brief ghostly apparition from the start of episode 1, we first meet her when Shinji refuses to pilot Unit 1 and they wheel the poor girl out of a hospital bed, and is she gonna be okay? Any doctors watching? Is the blood coming out good? Or not good. And so at the start of the show, Rei is used sort of only as a crutch to get Shinji into the robot. Because if he doesn't, there's the immediate consequence of someone else dying, which also acts as a great way to highlight a bit of Shinji's character. Even if he hates himself to the point that he says he does, he still isn't willing to let someone die in his place. Or maybe rather, he really doesn't care if he dies. But apart from being a crutch, Rei is also just a bit mysterious. She rarely talks, and when she does, it's very soft-spoken and direct. Like, I love after Shinji gets his teeth knocked in by Toji, she rocks up, and before an alarm or anything has gone off, she's like, yeah, there's an emergency, we gotta go to Neff, and then just sprints off, bye. But we really get to know Rei in the two-parter Rei 1 and Rei 2. Well, if Rei 1 is so good, why isn't there a Rei 2? It opens up on a test for Evangelion Unit 0. Being piloted by Rei, which begins to go horribly wrong with the Eva going sicko mode and punching the walls. Rei is ejected, and there's nothing deep to analyze about this, but I just love the way they animated the physics of this bit. The way the entry plug shoots off into the ceiling and the momentum pushes it into the corner. So good. The meat of the scene, however, is that Gendo, Shinji's father, in an out-of-character display of emotion, rushes over to the ejected plug, begins to manually open it himself despite the severe burns it gives him, just to make sure Rei is okay. It's a massive contrast to the way he treats his son, who he hasn't seen in years, and then says, fuck off. And with this context now in place, it sets up the relationship between Shinji and Rei. A girl of mystery and little emotion who is very hard to read, yet has this warm relationship with Gendo. A warm relation that Shinji so desperately covets. A majority of this episode is spent with Shinji just looking at her from afar, and not in a provocative teenage way like all the other boys are doing, but out of simple curiosity. When Ritsuko comes over for dinner and, bro, instant curry into the 2-minute noodles, Misato, what the fuck? Are you like 29? She asks Shinji to swing by Rei's apartment and drop off her new ID card, and so he does just that, but instantly it feels off. The apartment is made of nothing but a concrete interior, feeling almost like a prison. Unlike the warm and inviting feeling that Misato's place exudes, Rei's room feels nothing but lifeless, littered with bloody bandages, medicine, and a pair of glasses. Gendo's glasses, which in a spur moment Shinji puts on before, oops, uh-oh, she was in the shower! And then she rips off his glasses, but Shinji falls and her underwear goes everywhere, and I promise this is a really, really good show. But even through all this wacky anime bullshit, Rei still doesn't really care or exhibit any emotion.
In fact, the whole way back to Nerf, Rei doesn't really show anything except when Shinji starts bad-mouthing his father and Rei slaps him. From the outside looking in, Rei doesn't seem to care about anything. Anything except for Commander Ikari, that is. Anyways, there's another angel. This time it's a fucking diamond? It's like a big pyramid shape. What? And surprise, guess what? It's actually super strong. No, Shinji, get back. It's hurting you. Shinji, get back. Shinji, get back. Shinji! Oh no. I hope he's gonna be okay. Rei II is about fighting off this giant octahedron that is drilling into the Earth's crust as it attempts to get to Nerf HQ. Shinji is knocked out for a big chunk of the episode, and so we see a lot of Nerf just sort of organizing the assault, which sounds like it should be boring, but it is so engaging. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but man, I find the menus and people plugging cables together as enthralling as the robots punching big monsters, especially when they're using the big robots to move stuff. God, it's so sick! Give me 3 seasons of them building an apartment complex now! Once Shinji wakes and scoffs down Rei's yummy meal, oh my god, square egg and a bread? Rei, you shouldn't have! The two are instructed on their game plan while the rest of Nerf is firing up the big super sniper, and so Shinji and Rei patiently wait. There's this beautiful scene underneath the starry night sky where Shinji asks Rei why she pilots her Eva. She answers that it's her link, not just to Gendo but to everyone, and how she has nothing else, before she stands up and says goodbye, a final goodbye, because she intends to die in this mission to protect Shinji, which she ends up doing because Shinji misses the first shot, and then as he's reloading, she acts as a shield until he can reload and take out the big diamond guy, and the second is defeated, Shinji rips open her Eva and, mirroring his father, opens the latch up despite the pain to see his friend. Through teary eyes, he tells her not to say goodbye on their missions, not to say she doesn't have anything else, to which she's confused.
ごめんなさい。こういう時どんな顔すればいいのかわからないの。
Shinji tells her to try smiling. And then, like a flash of light, Rei sees Gendo in Shinji, and so a smile spreads across her face. I love this two-parter so much because Rei is such an interesting character. In an interview with the voice actress for Rei, Megumi Hayashibara, she describes how she was instructed to play Rei with the idea that it's not that she doesn't have emotion, but that she doesn't know what it is. And that is such an interesting idea for a character. A girl who seems otherworldly almost, who is slowly trying to learn what it's like to be human. Why that is the case for her and what are the secrets that she hold? We'll just have to wait and see. But as an introduction to the concept and character of Rei Ayanami, Rei I and Rei II, with the former being titled in Japanese Rei Beyond the Heart, they're these beautiful introductions to her character. And also Pen is here. Bro, why do you act like you're the main character? I think the start of the show is great because it quickly introduces this grand world and setting, but immediately sinks its teeth into these really interesting characters who have so much meat on the bone. And at this point in the show, you already have a vague idea in your head about how everyone thinks and acts in relation to one another. How Shinji feels about his father, and how he is jealous of Rei, who is also in adoration of his father, and Misato, who is stepping into the pseudo-maternal role for Shinji. And while all a little complicated, it feels stable. There is nothing temperamental here that would cause any of these characters to explode. That is until Asuka comes in. Asuka is, I think, the best character in the show. At this point, you have Shinji, who is quiet and meek, which pairs nicely with Misato's attempt at a paternal nature, and Rei, who is equally, if not more, quiet and introspective. It's a somewhat tense but never turbulent set of relations. But then Asuka comes in and just turns everything on its head. Just like the title of the episode suggests, she doesn't come walking in all politely. No, Asuka strikes. In comes this hot-headed, red-headed German girl, Asuka Langley Soryu, who stands out from the other two by being everything they're not. Confident, loud, bold, and striking. She crushes Toji's hat, and with her hair flailing in the wind, there she stands, ready for action. She also slaps this boy's face and breaks poor Kensuke's camera for a panty shot, but guys, okay, it was the 90s, I'm sorry. The episode is about them all sort of hanging out on these UN carrier battleships, which are transporting the brand new Evangelion Unit 2. When surprise, surprise, an angel attacks. How does this keep happening? They're not even in Tokyo right now. Unlike the horror or dread or even guilt-driven reactions to an angel Shinji has exhibited so far, Asuka excitedly says,
Yes.
You see, not only is Asuka filled with confidence up the wazoo and back, but she also derives all of her self-worth from piloting her Eva. This creates a great contrast to Shinji, who only really pilots it because, or maybe it's his father, or maybe it's because he doesn't care if he dies. He sort of just does it. Anytime anyone says anything nice about Shinji in this episode,
And the rest of the show, it's like this personal failure for her because instead of saying that nice thing to him, they could have said it to her.
and so right from the start, she is jumping at every opportunity to get in one and fight a big monster. You also get these great pot shots where she says stuff like Unit 0 and Unit 1 are really just prototypes, while her Unit 2 is the first real Evangelion. Poor Shinji, you're a real EVA pilot too. Also, why are you dressed up like her? What happened, buddy? And unlike Shinji, who is so polite and a bit of a drone, Asuka jumps into action straight away, putting the two of them in her Eva and saying she'll ask Misato for permission to pilot after they win. Not that this is super relevant, but there is a really cool moment where Asuka begins piloting her Eva in German, but because Shinji's in there and can't speak German, she has to switch the Eva's language settings to Japanese. And it's a small detail, but one that I've always loved.
Thanks, Anno. Now, despite her cockiness and need for validation, Asuka is fucking goated at piloting the Eva.
All within the limited 5 minutes of battery life the Eva holds, she's jumping around with ease, stylistically taking a poncho off mid-air, and when it comes to fighting the Angel, she blasts its mouth open wide with the help of Shinji. All in time for a cool landing. Oh, okay. Let's try.
Asuka Strikes is such a great introductory episode. It's a super fun, light-hearted romp, has some great bits of animation. I particularly like the acting when Misato shoves her face against a window. And by introducing Asuka, you now have the perfect foil for Shinji, whose quiet, soft-spoken, polite nature is constantly being challenged by Asuka's loud and cocky, mean demeanor.
But on the flip side of the episode, we are also introduced to another new character, Kaji, who, similar to how Asuka becomes a foil for Shinji, Kaji becomes the perfect pin in Misato's control of her facade. You see, Kaji and Misato used to have a past together.
They fucked.
And because of the closeness she once shared with him, he is the only character in the show who is able to get under her skin. At this point, we've seen Misato's effortless ability to put on a different face for whatever situation she is in, but Kaji just stops her from being able to do that. He makes her flustered and angry, and it's so fun to just see this perfect actress explode. But what makes it even more interesting is our girl Asuka has a massive crush on Kaji, one that is, obviously because of their age difference, not returned in the slightest.
Another big part of Asuka's character is her needing to be perceived by everyone as an adult. She puts on this face of maturity to seem like she is older and wiser than the 14-year-olds around her, and is constantly using her body as proof that she isn't some stupid kid.
I'm sure deep down she does have a crush on Kaji, but I think it's really motivated more by the prospect of being with a real grown man, which from her perspective would further validate to everyone how grown up she is.
But unfortunately for her, instead of being seen as an adult, she is still seen as a 14-year-old kid, and she has to move in with idiot Shinji. God, this fucking sucks!
Episode 9, Both of You Dance Like You Wanna Win,
What a title.
is also such a fun ride. Asuka transfers to their school, immediately is a popular heartthrob, and in a shocking twist, also moves in with Misato, to Shinji's horror. Now the two are at each other's throats all the time. Despite it being hard for Shinji, it is really fun to watch a character tease him to the point where the polite, quiet boy has his buttons pressed. And so it's exciting almost to see the two bring out this sibling-like energy out of one another.
If you've ever had a brother or sister, you know that it's exactly like this. Like, you do like each other, but you just bicker and argue non-stop.
And so when the two team up for their first fight and absolutely fall on their face because of Asuka's cockiness, lack of willingness to work in a team, and desire to look good in a Japanese debut, this sends the two into one of many childish arguments. For the rest of the episode, Shinji and Asuka have to learn to work as a team by being 100% in sync with another at all moments. Asuka thinks the whole thing is stupid and pointless, with Shinji being the reason it won't work. That is, until Misato makes Rei go up and do the Dance Dance Revolution thing with Shinji, and they do it perfectly, shattering Asuka's ego in front of everyone. In a weird way, it was sort of the perfect motivation Asuka needed. She tells Shinji they're going to do it no matter what, because Misato and Rei have to pay for hurting her pride. Her ego is her number one motivator for everything. Thus begins this super fun sequence of the two of them being completely in sync together in every moment.
My bitch wife wants to watch Orange?
Which then turns into this just incredible scene of the two teaming up in battle and perfectly executing the attack against the Angel to this incredible bit of music. They're happy and the nerve scientists are smiling, and it's one of the best, most feel-good moments of the entire show. But maybe the most interesting part of the episode is earlier on when the two are sleeping. Asuka sleepwalks in and lays down next to Shinji. In a very uncomfortable moment, Shinji tries to kiss the sleeping girl. Ugh. But before he can, she mutters and begins to cry. Angrily, Shinji storms to the other side of the room and groans to himself.
自分だって子供のくせに
There's a lot going on in this scene. There's an attempt at sexual assault, the first reference to Asuka's mother who maybe defines why she acts the way she does, and also Shinji's retaliation against Asuka. I love that even though the two get angry at each other a lot, this here feels like Shinji's true rage. When they argue face to face, Asuka always has the upper hand and he's just always replying flusteredly. Whilst here, with no one around and speaking just to himself, the anger he has at her feels real. As real as the depression he only shared with himself a couple of episodes ago.
But what was all that about anyways? We'll get to it. I promise.
As the show goes on, Asuka continues to be the GOAT of all characters. In episode 10, Magma Driver, everyone at school goes off on a trip, leaving these three behind. Asuka goes up to Shinji and starts poking fun at him, trying to get a reaction. But when she tries to provoke him by talking about her boobs and he doesn't do anything but get flustered, she calls him boring and walks away. It's like if she can't be given the attention that she wants, that other person is useless. Which she doesn't ever try with Rei, by the way, because as you can imagine, the relationship between Asuka and Rei is like this. Yo, Rei, what up? Nothing.
You're so boring!
But despite it all, Asuka does do a very funny entrance into the pool. Sick.
Anyway, there's an angel attack. Can you believe it? And they've got to go into some lava, which of course Asuka is happy to accept, even when she has to put on this big inflation suit in front of her crush. Ew, no! Anyways, they defeat the angel. Wow, time for the hot springs, which ends on Asuka with a face of embarrassment or almost sadness asking Misato.
知ってるんでしょ私のこともみんな
Another hint at this mysterious past of Asuka's. Yeah, I'm beginning to think there's more to this girl than being a redhead and being from Mexico.
I think the reason I find Asuka's tale so compelling is that, to me, Asuka's the story of a girl who simply has to lock in. And fails to do so on such a catastrophic level.
Like I said before, the only thing Asuka cares about is being perceived as two things. One, the world's best Evangelion pilot, and two, an adult. Everything in her life revolves around her ego and her pride, which is just as fragile as it is strong, if that makes sense. Almost every retort or reply she has about anything is in reference to her being the best pilot, or failing to be that. Which is mixed in with being a 14-year-old girl desperate for the world to see her as an adult. As the series goes on, these two things slip further and further from her grasp. And because of her nature, she is always butting heads with everyone. If it's not the perfect little doll Rei who always knows everything and she can't get a reaction out of, which only pisses her off more, it's Misato who is always telling her what to do at every turn, as well as being involved romantically with the man she wants for herself, the man who will invalidate all of her insecurities. And then there is Shinji, whose quiet and meek nature, as well as him constantly succeeding in battle over her, sends her often into a fit of rage. Being German,
Not Mexican, sorry.
she's one of the rare characters in the show who gets to be direct and blunt about everything she says and means, unlike the Japanese characters who always sort of politely beat around the bush.
日本人の心情は察しと思いやりだからよ
And despite how hot-headed she is, how mean she is to Shinji, how loud and blunt she is, you kinda wanna root for her. She's not a bad leader or fighter or anything. I actually quite like the episode where the power goes out and she takes charge of the trio and, you know, Shinji, crank that soldier boy. But as the series enters its second half, things only get worse and worse for Asuka. And if you are on the team that is rooting for her, it only becomes a harder and harder watch. In episode 15, those women longed for the touch of others' lips and thus invited their kisses. At one point, Asuka and Shinji are home alone. A cool detail in the show to look out for is that every time Misato leaves the house, Asuka wears her yellow shirt, and almost every time she is wearing this shirt, she is stepping into the role of an adult woman in the house. Which is why she turns to Shinji and asks him to kiss her. Despite her constant desperate plea to be seen as an adult, the two go about it in a very childish way, with her complaining his breath stinks and pinching his nose. Even Pen Pen is out, see ya! And after her first real taste of what being an adult is like, she runs to puke in the sink. Now this is all played off a little bit with sympathy for Shinji. Poor guy was a terrible kisser and she ran away screaming. But it's this sort of tragic moment for Asuka. Nothing she can do or replicate or mimic will bring her closer to what she desires. The unraveling of her ego and her desperation coincide with one another. The more she ends up second to Shinji, the more volatile and fiery she becomes in response. And the more she loses Kaji, who is spending most of his time with Misato and also being a big government spy, We'll get to it.
the more she feels like everything she needs is being ripped out from right in front of her very eyes. In episode 16, Splitting of the Breast, Shinji does well on his sync test with his Ava, and so Misato says,
Hi, you are number one!
And Asuka, oh my god bro, she starts crashing out.
oh, Shinji's the best, he's so good, we should all be so lucky for him, and then she punches the metal locker.
Is your hand okay?
Later in the episode, Shinji disappears into the Ava, and everyone thinks he is dead, but he's really just having a weird dream, but like, don't worry about it, we'll talk about it later. Just bro, get off blue, we're watching orange! When Shinji comes back to his physical form, the only thing Asuka mutters under her breath is how Misato said she was gonna scold him when he got back. A comment said by someone obviously not familiar with the difference between the things her mother says and the way she acts when her kid goes missing. And despite all this, despite how much everyone is coddling and praising Shinji and not her, despite her beginning to sort of lose her grip on the situation, she is still determined to win everyone's approval by being the best Evangelion pilot. Even in this moment where Shinji's Ava emerges covered in an obscene amount of blood, and Asuka is like, wow, okay, I'm deriving all of my self-worth from piloting a fucking monster.
That's good.
And the next time she pilots, she is knocked out so quickly we don't even see it on screen. The next time after that, she's up in her Ava all alone and everything is up to her. There's no Rei, there's no Shinji, even Misato says.
頼んだわよ、アスカ。
But sorry, Asuka actually has a ticket to a little place called Crash Out Town, because when she gets up there, all she can think about is beating Shinji and proving Misato wrong, and fueling her ego, which has done nothing but take a massive hit lately.
And at first things go well. I mean, Asuka is a talented Ava pilot, but the angel won't die, and so she fires and fires and fires, and she refuses to lose, and she fires and fires and fires until her arms are ripped off and her head is severed from her body. When we cut to the inside of the entry plug, you can tell that it's not the feeling of having her limbs ripped off that is bothering her, but it's the fact that she failed again. And Asuka just keeps losing it. We see inside her room with broken mugs and ripped up magazines. She slams the phone to Misato, telling her not to waste her time telling her stupid things like the fact that Rei is alive after their last big fight. And in a shot that rhymes with one of Shinji's moments of depression earlier in the show, we see Asuka lying alone in a dark room. But she has her back turned to us. She's cutting us off from seeing her in this state, seeing her be weak and angry and upset. She isn't in Crash Out Town, bro, she's in Crash Out City. Which all culminates in episode 22, Don't Be. It opens on a flashback precursor to Asuka Strikes, with Asuka and Kaji chilling out before the two came to Japan. She begins teasing Kaji by saying how he is the only one for her, which he stone-faced replies that she is just a kid. She then does the only thing she knows how to. She shows him her body and yells at him. And we cut to a title card. No catchy song, no introduction, just instantly straight into one of the hardest to watch episodes in the whole show. When we met Asuka in episode 8, you might have thought on first glance that she was super put together and capable, simply because of her confidence. But once you get to this point of the story, you know that her crash out was always inevitable. And it wasn't because of piloting an Evangelion or because of Shinji or Misato or any of that. It was always because of herself. Nothing goes right for her this episode. Old memories of seeing her mother in hospital stir up in her mind, leading her, amongst everything else that has happened, to drop sync rates with her Ava. Later, she spots Shinji at a train station, and even though he was kind of dead for a month,
Look, a lot happens in this show.
all she can think about is how she lost to him. She gets a phone call from Germany where she has to put on a superficial face for her stepmom, and when Shinji asks, she accidentally lets down her guard and explains this to him, and then freaks out realizing how low she must have fallen to have Shinji pity her. It's kind of like an extreme version of that scene in the pool. If she can't have people reacting to her in the way that she wants, then they're useless, and their continued efforts anger her more. Then she stares at the bathtub. The same bathtub that Shinji used, that Misato used. The same washing machine that Shinji used, that Misato used. The same air that Shinji breathed, that Misato breathed, and she just loses it. She hates Misato, she hates Shinji, she hates her parents, but most of all, she hates herself. Everything in her life is like this cycle of destruction and despair, which only reinforces itself as she falls further and further down. The only way she knows how to cling on and climb her way out of it is by being the best at something, which she is currently failing to do, which is only making her fall further. One of the best scenes in the show is when Asuka goes into the elevator. Already in a crummy mood, she gets in to see that Rei is there.
Miss Perfect, the one who never gives a reaction, never speaks up, and is just an ideal doll in every way, which pisses Asuka off. This scene goes for 50 whole seconds before either of them speak. And yeah, you can attest it to a budgetary issue, which is probably true, but it works so incredibly well because it's just a whole minute of tension. You feel claustrophobic as you're stuck in the elevator with the lion and her prey, and at any moment one of them is going to set the other off. And so Rei opens her mouth and Asuka loses it.
心を開かなければエヴァは動かないわ。
Hell must have frozen over if Rei is starting a conversation with her. She begins lashing out about Shinji this, Shinji that, he is the best, they don't need to lift a finger. And then she accuses Rei of just being Gendo's droning doll, which Rei tries to argue back at, but that doesn't help because Asuka slaps her and storms out.
みんな大嫌い!
Guess what? Knock knock, it's an angel. Asuka ignores her orders to be a support to Unit 0 and decides to take point. So Misato, who is kind of sick of her shit by this point, is like, alright, yeah, go on, do it. Fucking prove me wrong then. Asuka waits in the rain. She knows there's no room for screw-ups. This is her last chance, or she'll lose her Evangelion, and then she'll lose everything. So she aims the rifle, it begins to line up, and then... The angel begins to psychologically attack her, causing her to go into a confused fit of rage as it continues to infiltrate into her mind. She begs and she pleads it to stay out of her head as she's hit with a pang of repressed thoughts. We don't even see what she is trying so hard to repress, but even still, it's so hard to watch. Misato begs her to retreat, tells her it's an order, to which she screams in protest.
いや絶対に嫌！今戻るならここで死んだ方がマシだわ！
And so with an explosion, we go inside of Asuka's mind. What we experience here is a menagerie of Asuka's thoughts and memories. Memories she has buried deep down, accompanied by the introspections of a poor girl who has fallen to her lowest point. She begs her mother to look at her. A door opens, then the words no and death flash by in German, and then again and again. She screams as the trauma is brought back up and forcefully thrown in front of her. We see a hung doll as Asuka begs her mum to know who she is. We then get a flashing of Asuka introducing herself and then showing off her body, which Asuka rejects in a scream. No, this isn't who I am. It happens again, but slightly differently. No, this isn't who I am. Then again and again. Then in a lone street, she stumbles as she is overtaken by a sea of people. She has nobody. She is nobody. She's nobody in this world. And when she is nobody, who is she? It ends with the child version of herself standing over a closed up Asuka on the ground, asking her if she's lonely, which she rejects and puts a wall up to, which only brings more questions, which she painfully rejects again and again before a flurry of images flash by and it's over. Asuka sits in the Eva and calls out to Kaji, asking him what to do. She's been defiled. She is dirty now. What is she to do? Obviously, a tale about a young girl whose mother died by suicide and was replaced by a doll is uniquely tragic, but I think what makes this sequence, as well as Asuka's entire story, hit so hard is because it's relatable. Asuka has a big ego, but it's not out of anything malicious, it's just her coping mechanism. She doesn't need her dead mother, and in fact she doesn't need anyone, so she wants to grow up as quickly as possible and prove she is capable of supporting herself. And if people are praising her, that will fuel her delusion that she is capable, and so she needs to be the best at piloting her Eva. She needs to be the adult in every situation. She needs to be better than the rest of the kids who act so childish. She needs a romantic adult relationship to validate that she is grown up. She needs to be better than Shinji, who everyone just praises all the time, and she needs to be better than Rei, who is nothing but a doll who follows orders. She needs to be better. But within this desire to be something else, fueled by this want of constant approval, Asuka loses herself. She doesn't know who she is, her identity being reduced to the way others stroke or don't stroke her ego. There's this moment I find heartbreaking that doesn't get sung about a lot, in which Asuka runs away to her best friend Hikari's house. After doing nothing but playing games all day, they go to bed. She finally opens up, probably with great shame, and tells Hikari about how she is feeling. To which Hikari replies, I don't know, you should be really proud of what you've done. To which Asuka begins to sob quietly to herself. It's validation, but it doesn't mean anything. Maybe because it's not coming from the source that she wants, or maybe because it's not actually the solution to fixing her problems. And therefore, it's useless. Watching Asuka's trajectory is harrowing and sometimes downright difficult, especially when her first few outings were these fun, lighthearted adventures. But even in those episodes, you can see the seeds that would eventually bloom into this. Seeing her alone in a bathtub, stripped down and defeated, looking lifelessly up into the sky, and then being sent comatose to the hospital is maybe the most heartbreaking thing in the show. And again, that is in part due to its relatability. I saw this tweet literally the other day that was like, oh, maybe if I get good enough at drawing, I'll never feel bad again. And like, that is literally Asuka. She pushes all her trauma and her pain and her weaknesses behind this desire to be good at something. Because maybe if she just reaches it, it will solve everything and people will love her and she can finally fill the hole left by her mother and she can be happy again. And like, I've been there 1,000 times. It's not piloting a giant robot to save humanity, but if I just get good enough at the violin, people will like me. Or if I get good enough at singing, people will like me. Or if I get a good enough grade, people will like me. Or if I make a good enough YouTube video, people will finally like me. If I was just talented enough and funny enough and clever enough, I'll finally be happy. And like, on some level, like, it can be a good motivator, but let's say you achieve all those things. Let's say you get all the applause in the world. That doesn't magically turn a switch on inside you that fixes you. It has to come from within. And the further Asuka falls down the rabbit hole, the harder you root for her to just get back up, which doesn't ever really happen. Asuka's story really reminds me of this flute teacher from high school. All growing up, she was incredibly talented at the flute, and it was her dream to play for the Melbourne Symphony. And after doting her teenage years and going to uni for music, she finally had a chance to audition for the MSO. When you audition for an orchestra, they put up these black screens so they can't actually see you and can only judge you based on the way you play. And then she turned to me and she said, and I remember this so vividly, she went, "You know when you want something so bad and you just..." It was this rare emotional vulnerability that she opened up to me with when I was just a student that would bug her all the time. A student who was the same age, coincidentally, as Asuka is. But unlike Asuka, that teacher's world didn't collapse in on herself when she didn't achieve the goal that she put all her self-worth into. She changed course, she became a teacher, and she had such a profoundly positive impact on my life and the life of so many of my peers at school. Watching Asuka fall further and further throughout the series and not be able to find a happy ending within herself is one of the most impactful parts about the show. It can be hard and difficult and confronting, but it's so beautifully done. And that is why Asuka is my favorite character. What's up, it's me, Ramiel! They're like the blue diamond angel. I'm in my garage/shed. Oh no, is it already broken? The strap's already broken, we're running out of time. This thing's becoming lopsided as we speak. It almost feels like a rule of the universe that if a show is very dark and serious in nature, that its memes and its fanbase will react in the exact opposite way. And Evangelion is no exception. For a show that tackles with some really heavy subject matter, you wouldn't be able to tell that was the case if you'd only been exposed to it from the memes.
Shinji and his friends need you. Come to Noah's birthday party June 25th at home.
Everybody, just make sure you keep the 25th of June free, because we're all gonna go to Noah's birthday party. I feel like Evangelion is like almost famous for its memes. I feel like people know it more from the memes than they actually do from the show itself. I mean, even people who haven't watched the show know about Get in the Robot Shinji. What I think's been really fun since the show premiered 30 years ago is when people make memes now, they've sort of morphed the kids' personalities into being like these modern kids in the 21st century, and their personalities have been adjusted to suit it. I can speak Japanese, by the way, and those subtitles are 100% accurate. I like this one where it's like Evangelion if it was entertaining, because yeah, like if it was about golf, it would be way more entertaining. Instead of, where I can't get in the robot, like Shinji, shut up. I'm literally trying to get a hole in one right now. Oh cool, an Evangelion test, I'll partake. First name Snug, second name Boy. My EVA unit number, oh that'd be 4722638212647228. Here are my details. Take it. There's like $7 in there, it's all yours. Also, anyways, did you guys know that Shinji can play the he's not very good. Unfortunately, a lot of the memes are sort of like, haha, porn is the punchline. But even in that sea of trash, you occasionally find some nuggets of gold. Like this one. Sometimes I fantasize about Misato coming home drunk and beating me until I feel numb. She kicks me in the ribs until I can hardly breathe. Then she starts to cry and apologizes, begging me to forgive her. She holds me all night as I gently cry into her t-shirt. Is there any hope for me? Back of the line, buddy. There's some great ones about Shinji never getting any pussy.
How much pussy does this motherfucker get? We read 0 pussy, man. Dear God.
And then there are these beautiful memes that cross the borders internationally as they transcend the language barrier. And then transcend the language barrier, but in a different way. God, I wish I was that cool. No, but it actually is kind of neat seeing memes from languages that we can't speak from other countries in the world.
Misato-san! Misato-san!
Nice, Japan. Anyways, here's Ritsuko smoking it up with Garfield. This is canon, by the way. Hideaki Anno told me. There's also a lot of great fan-dubs from people all around the world, and my favorites are the ones where they sort of recontextualize the teenagers in the modern world, like I was sort of talking about earlier. One of my favorites is by this voice actress called CrystalAvengerVA, and she almost makes them a little too real.
If you're not gay, then why do you dress like that? Like what? Like a loser!
Literally anytime somebody in my life says the word loser, that last line reverberates around in my empty skull like you wouldn't believe.
Idiot Snugboy!
What the fuck was that? There are literally millions of memes from all corners of the world in every language possible, and to be serious for a moment, I think this is a reason why the show has persisted for so many years. These characters are so deep and multi-layered, and because of that, it's very easy to sort of take them and put them into any scenario, even if it's just a silly joke. And, you know, I just thought it'd be nice to talk about this after all the... And sometimes I've even found them helpful. I think it's a very common reaction to finish the show and be like, what the fuck was that? What happened? And the Evangelion in 5 minutes video series by Mega64, whilst also being the funniest, most brilliantly executed high-budget, low-budget parody of a series ever, is also just really good in simple terms explaining to you what happens in the show. Like, it made so much sense after being confused in the actual show.
Congratulations.
I'm sorry, who are you?
I'm your mom.
Because you look like Rei.
All right, let's wrap this shit up.
Thanks, Mega64. Okay, so what actually happens in this show? Evangelion is about this boy Shinji, who comes to Tokyo 3 because his father called for him after years of no contact to pilot this giant robot and defeat these giant monsters called angels. And yes, we know all that already, but what I haven't really covered is Gendo's plan, which as an audience, we don't really know. But we do get a million scenes of Gendo being surrounded by this mysterious faceless council called Seele. And literally every one of these scenes is like, Gendo, what the fuck are you doing? Stick to our plan to enact our evil wish. And then Gendo goes, I'm doing that. And then the screen's cut out and he goes, not. And this scene plays out maybe 50 times and it is so great every single time. Because it's fun to have a show with a mystery, and not like a whodunit mystery, but one in which we, the viewer, are slowly given every puzzle piece to figure out the entirety of this world. Every time you get a line or even just an expression from Gendo, or another character finds out another clue in what is even going on, or how multiple people are manipulating the scenario and playing out their dealt cards to best usurp said situation, it is such a delight. And one of the pieces of the world we slowly learn a bit about here and there as the show progresses is the second impact. The show is described as being post-apocalyptic, which is true, but what I think is so clever about it is that the post-apocalyptic setting is just the foundation for this world. It never evokes the imagery that springs to mind upon hearing the name of the genre. There's no looting, or mass people dying, or someone walking in the snow being like, oh man, I've got no beans left. We see, in fact, a pretty normal life for these people, with only occasional reminders that a cataclysmic event happened a while ago. Okay, so what exactly was that post-apocalyptic event, and why does it matter? Well, in the year 2000, a meteorite hit Antarctica, causing the ocean levels to quickly rise, stopping the Earth from changing seasons, and killing off a big chunk of the population. Uh-oh. But we see so little of this event, experiencing it mostly through the eyes of characters living in its aftermath. Like the opening shots of the show are the angel Sachiel swimming through the flooded streets of what once was Tokyo. Or in Asuka Strikes, when they're planning their attack against the angel, the blueprints they show are just a map of what once was the city that lays underneath. One of my favorite details in the show is that every single time they are in class, the teacher is always talking about the second impact. act, including this quiet, sad moment where he wistfully looks out the window, talking about his old life and old house, lost in the memories of a time now gone, while all the children ignore him as they go through school in a way that feels very relatable and normal to us. And a lot of this show feels like children having to live with the consequences of the adults that preceded them. To all the children in the show, born after the near-world ending event, this is all just normal, regular life to them. And if it's not their world which has been meddled with, it's how they are constantly caught in the crossfire or are used as pawns by the adults of the old world as they meddle with things that they shouldn't be. Because the second impact wasn't actually a meteorite. Sorry, I lied. In actuality, there was this angel, the very first angel, called Adam. The scientists wanted to try a cheeky little experiment and merge human DNA with his, but Adam didn't like that and so woke up and he handled it really well. Thanks, dude. And so it's directly through the actions of a greedy handful of adults pushing too far and trying to harness the power of a god that has massive consequences for the world and then for the new inhabitants of that world. Throughout the show, there's this overarching theme of man and science versus the power of God. We see this in small ways even as early as episode 2 when Misato says,
やっぱクーラーは人類の至宝。まさに科学の勝利ね。
and all throughout the Nair facility in which its motto is proudly painted onto the walls, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world, which is a line that comes from the Robert Browning 1841 verse drama poem Pippa Passes, and is often used to express optimism. But in this context, it's always struck me as egotistical and power hungry. God is up there, and we are down here, so we are going to take control of our world, which is exactly what Nev intended to do when they began experimenting on a god, because actually Adam, that angel, yeah, he was kind of a god. And okay, so because I'm just gonna get the lore out of the way because you kind of need all the weird backstory stuff to make sure all the character stuff makes sense. But that's not really what I love about the show. But I'll just get out of the way. Okay, so basically,
Okay, so billions of years ago there was the first ancestral race and their planet was dying, so they made these things called the Seeds of Life, and two of these called Adam and Lilith were sent to Earth, which wasn't supposed to happen. There weren't supposed to be two, only one was supposed to arrive and populate the planet. Anyways, Adam landed in Antarctica and Lilith landed in Japan. Crash site Japan moment? Adam is known as the fruit of life, so he's really strong and create angels and they are the true inhabitants of the planet. Meanwhile, Lilith is known as the fruit of knowledge, which means she is smart. Also, she had a big fork, but she lost it, and then they found it in the show, and in the basement they have this guy Adam, and they found him in Antarctica when they put some human DNA in him, and he didn't like that, so he went boom, and they tried making clones of him, which is what the Evangelions are. They're clones of Adam, but they need the soul of a mother inside them to work. So that is why Yui, Shinji's mum, is in Unit 1 after she sacrificed herself to be inside it, but it was played off as a freak accident. And also, Kyoko, Asuka's mum, is in Unit 2, and why Rei can pilot Unit 0 without a mother because she is a clone of a mum, I don't know. And basically, the evil Basile are trying to recreate the massive apocalyptic event in Antarctica, even though they told everyone they're trying to prevent it because they want to instruct the Human Instrumentality Project, which will merge all souls together, no one will be lonely, and evolve humanity. And to do that, they need to stop the angels from enacting the apocalypse in their way, so the Basile guys can do it in their way instead. And to do all that, they need a 14-year-old boy to pilot a robot and beat them up.
it's a lot, especially when you get it read out to you in one sitting like that. But what I think the show doesn't get enough credit for is the way it unveils this mystery over its 26 episode run, which is primarily done through the eyes of Misato. For the most part, I feel like we see the show from the lens of two characters. Misato, and through her, the perspective of the adult scientist who wish to toy with the power of a god, and Shinji, a child who has to bear the consequences of those adults. And bear the consequences, he does. Because he's too busy screaming, Shinji doesn't really know what's going on, TBH. Don't worry about it, just get in the robot, man. And so we are with Misato as she uncovers what the hell is going on, one step at a time. Why though? Why does she care? Well, we find out later on in the show that Misato's father was the lead scientist on the expedition to see Adam and inject him with DNA and create Funky Town in the South Pole. And because of his death and the mystery surrounding the entire incident, it leads Misato to wanting nothing more than to uncover the truth, even though she didn't really like her dad. Look, it's daddy issues, okay? And that's why we're seeing the mystery unfold from her eyes. We see how she clues very early on that things are being orchestrated behind the scene. She's constantly doing investigative work, cleverly piecing things together from the way people react or don't react. But it's not the only thing she's doing the whole show. She's not exclusively a conduit for us to Scooby-Doo this shit. Because remember this guy? Hey, it's Kaji! Watermelon lover! He, by the way, is a spy for the government, but maybe most importantly is this perfect pin that completely unravels Misato. While she is trying to balance her job and finding out all the secrets her job is hiding and sort of being a mother to two kids, this man who she loved a long time ago is suddenly back in her life and they're both indulging in one another. Misato's character is so great because, as I've said a couple of times already, she is constantly putting on these different faces and appearances based on who she is around and for what purpose. But with Kaji, she's unable to do do that. So in scenes when it's just the two of them, we get a rare glimpse at the real, unfiltered Misato. One of my favorites is where a drunk Misato starts word vomiting to Kaji about how she is so childish and just wanted to run away from her father who she hated, and who does she think she is, always chastising Shinji for doing the exact same things she does. And it's maybe the only time in the show, in this drunken and emotionally vulnerable state, where she draws the comparison between Shinji and herself, which makes her spiral, and just before she crashes out completely, Kaji shuts her up by kissing her. Ugh. And yeah, it's like a little yuck, but it's kind of the point of the scene and a big indicator about Misato's character. She indulges in intimacy with him as a way to escape from herself into someone else's comfort, because if she doesn't, she'll remember how she hates herself. There's a moment at the end of episode 20 that everyone loves to rag on, because it's a 90-second shot of Misato and Kaji banging. I can assure you, dear viewer, this 30-second still frame of Misato getting her cheeks railed by Kaji was absolutely critical to the plot. Yeah, it is! Right before the long shot, Kaji says, the point of us being a fly on the wall is for us to see a rare glimpse of Misato being her raw, true self around Kaji, indulging in the deception that intimacy gives her. This brief moment of escape from the cruelty of the world around her. It's made even more obvious when Misato says to Kaji,
タバコまだ吸ってたんだな。こういうことの後にしか吸わないわ。だから知ってるのはカジ君だけよ。
It kind of frustrates me that when you talk about any type of media and the concept of sex or sexual intimacy and how that relates to a character's experience through life is brought up, people get really abashed and afraid of it. Even Gen Z, what the hell? If this show is about anything, a big chunk of it is about the human condition and the experiences, both good and bad, of being alive. And sex is a big part of it, especially for Misato's character, and how she uses it to escape and pretend she doesn't hate herself or isn't lonely, even if just for a moment. The one person she can let down the walls and be her true self with. And also, it is plot relevant because he tries to put this pill up her pussy, and the pill is like a USB that has all the secrets for the secret council. Told you, man, he's a spy. A really fun fact about Misato is that she was slightly based off of Sailor Moon, or at least the idea of what Sailor Moon would be like when she grew up. You can see that with the bangs and the general face shape, but also because in Japanese they share the same actress. Hideaki Anno actually worked on Sailor Moon a little, most notably helping animate the Uranus and Neptune transformations, which is crazy because Sailor Uranus shares a voice actress with Shinji. Oh my god, it's all connected! And actually, if you don't mind, I do just want to take a sidebar real quick and talk about the acting, which is really good. You may have noticed I've been using clips from the Japanese audio for all my examples, and it's because I think the original recording is just so perfectly done. You've got this pitch perfect casting with these actors who are able to pull off such a brilliantly wide range of emotions and situations, taking these characters into places you couldn't even predict when you started the show. And just for the record, I am not a subs ride or die sort of guy. I actually think dubs, especially in the last 10 years or so, have gotten incredibly good. And a lot of dub actors are, I think, unfairly criticized and blasted on social media, when in reality there has never been a better time for talent in this industry. So keep that opinion in mind when I tell you that if you haven't seen this show before, I don't know why you'd be watching this video if you haven't, just pretend you haven't seen it. I'd be pretty hard pressed to recommend you anything other than the Japanese original. There are 2 English dubs of Evangelion, and unfortunately they sort of come along with their own unique set of problems. But because of that, they're super interesting to talk about because of the ways that they compare. The original dub, referred to as the ADV dub, compared to others in the 90s, is actually pretty commendable. It doesn't try to Americanize the show at all. Like, all the characters are still called Shinji and Asuka and Misato, there's no Serena business, or I'm gonna eat a donut! And the script is mostly very faithful to the Japanese. So for the context of the time, it's pretty impressive, but age has not been super kind to it, as you have a bunch of actors who are seeing Evangelion for the first time as they were recording it. And so there is this sense that a lot of the performances take a couple of episodes to warm up.
I can't pilot that thing! I'm the pilot of Evangelion Unit 1, Shinji Ikari!
But once they're all settled, it's pretty good, albeit with some rough spots here and there. In 2019, Netflix acquired the rights to the original show and its 2 films, and for whatever reason, decided to completely redub the show. That means a new script and a new cast. Some of the original actors, who by this point had been playing the characters for over 20 years, even flew out to audition for this new dub but didn't get it. There's this very sad quote from Tiffany Grant, the original English voice of Asuka, where she says, "For months I've been dreading this moment, the moment I am no longer Asuka." manga, which kind of breaks my heart a little bit. But creatively, sometimes these things just happen and they wanted a fresh start, and I think it's good to go into redubs of anything with an open mind. And for the Netflix dub, it's good and bad in completely different ways to the original dub. The coolest thing about it to me is that the new voice for Shinji, Casey Mongelo, not only sounds so close to the Japanese original Megumi Ogata,
A teacher once told me that he has the admirable job of defending humanity.
but just is Shinji IRL. Like, what the fuck? That's Shinji, bro! But for me, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of some of the other casting decisions. Kotono Mitsuishi does this incredible job of balancing being cool but quirky and silly, but at times commanding with her portrayal of Misato. And I don't think the new actress, or the old one to be honest, quite hit it in English.
はいはいはいはいって新規臭いわね。お、どこどこでしょ？シャキッとすはいシャキッと。Yes ma'am, yes ma'am. It's all you ever say. Boring. Grow a spine. Show some grit. Be a big boy for once.
Yes, yes, yes. Is that all you can say? It's getting on my nerves! You're a boy! Act like one!
But the biggest problem with the Netflix dub is the new translation. It was done by the in-house translator at Anno's new studio, Studio Kara. And so it is 100% accurate to the Japanese script, which sounds great on paper, but in reality leaves everyone sounding like a disjointed robot. They don't feel like characters anymore, as you become harshly aware of individual people in a recording booth saying lines into a microphone. The big complaint about the ADV dub is that it's sometimes a little too loose in its translation. Not in a way where they change story beats or anything like that, but they'll make the speech more casual, which does help in making them all feel like real people, but at the expense of a 100% authentic script. Like there's this moment at the end of Magma Diver, where Shinji gets an erection for the first time. That was a whiplash. In Japanese, he directly says, while in the ADV dub he says,
thermal expansion. How embarrassing.
Which I think is a very cute and charming joke that ties into a plot point from earlier in the episode.
It's a question about thermal expansion.
Thermal expansion? Oh man, that's kid stuff.
While in the Netflix dub, he just says,
I can't believe this is happening. Oh man.
It's kind of boring. And there's this one thing they changed for the Netflix dub that drives me up the wall. In the Japanese version, they refer to Shinji, Rei, Asuka, and all the kids who pilot the Avas as children, but even when talking about them individually. Because that isn't how plurals work in Japanese, and they're borrowing the word from English, it sounds okay in the original. So in the ADV dub, they changed it, so now instead of referring to Rei as the first children, they instead say,
the first child. Designated pilot for the Evangelion Unit 0.
Because, you know, now it's in English, and that is grammatically correct to our language. In the Netflix one, however, they swapped it back to how it sounded in Japanese, which means you have characters all the time referring to one person with a plural.
How could he be the fourth children? That's impossible, it doesn't make any sense.
And it sounds like such a small detail, but it drives me crazy every time. And look, you can spend hours comparing the two English versions to one another, but I think because of their unique set of flaws, it is just the easiest option to recommend the Japanese original, which is so good. I do think it sucks that there's this precedent that when a new dub happens, the old one is just lost forever. You can only find the ADV dub on the 7 Seas or on an old-ass DVD, which I think is a big shame to all the original artists who helped bring it over to the West in the first place. There's actually this really cool documentary by this guy called Dylan G that only has a couple hundred views, and he interviews practically everyone involved in that original ADV dub, so I implore you, please check it out. And just one more thing, the Netflix version omits one of the key characters of the show, the end credits music, Fly Me to the Moon. After every single episode, you are greeted to a variety of covers of Bart Howard's Fly Me to the Moon. Some versions are sung by professional singers.
Darling, kiss me.
Some are sung by the voice actors of the main characters.
I love you.
There's a weird Eurobeat one for one episode.
Fly me to the moon.
And it is the biggest delight and comfort to end an episode of the show to this song, especially in the later episodes when things get heavy. It is, I think, the biggest crime that this new version on Netflix and the Blu-ray replaces it with the track Rei I. which is a fine song, but is the complete wrong tone for the credits. Instead of being held softly after an episode, you're instead greeted to an uncomfortable feeling of unease. I've heard multiple reasons for why it didn't show up. Between Netflix not wanting to fork out the money, or Studio Kara not wanting to pay one of the artists for the royalties, I don't know. And I know it sounds like a small thing to complain about, but it really does make a world of difference, as Fly Me to the Moon is so thematically perfect for Evangelion. And when you finish that last episode in particular, it just hits in this really special way. Oh, and by the way, the soundtrack to Evangelion in general is incredible. Shiro Sagasu just bangs in every single track, and I would love to talk about it more, but I can't. I will be sued by Japanese copyright lawyers to death. But if you'd like to see me talk about that, please consider signing up to be a member, where you'll get an additional bonus part of the video where I talk about the music. It will also come with a behind the scenes mini documentary making of Thingy, and extended thoughts where I'll talk more about the spin-offs, uncut versions of something, a commentary track for the End of Evangelion, that's the movie, and you'll get the video 24 hours early. Well, I mean, if you haven't signed up by then, you won't get it, but like in the future videos, you know what I mean. These videos took a long time to make, so any support means the absolute world to me. But also, I'm just very appreciative of you being here at all. Like, I've been yapping about this show for so long and we still have a long way to go. So I guess without further ado, let's get back to the depressing stuff. Where were we? Oh yeah, this lore is crazy! But why go through all the effort of talking about the complicated lore and Misato discovering it and all the stuff going on in the background? Well, because all of that setup is the perfect foundation for the show to explore and examine the psyche of these characters. And we see this both in terms of the way the characters react to the big bad plot, as well as very literally in the many scenes that take place inside the characters' heads. We first get a taste of this experimental way of storytelling within the series in episode 14, Weaving a Story, where in the second half we get to see into the heart of Rei, which is very interesting for the fact alone that she is usually so silent and hard to read. So being able to directly hear her ponder about life, about humanity, and most importantly about herself is beyond fascinating. Because also, by the way, we find out later on that Rei is a clone. And it's one of those things where on the first time through, you're like, why is this girl so weird? Why does she blush when Shinji said she squeezes a rag like a mother? Why does she act so nonchalant all the time? Ugh, put on some clothes. But on a second watch, Rei becomes this delightfully interesting character because the whole story is about learning what it means to be human. Emotions, identity, and a sense of self. These are all things that Rei struggles with. Amongst, you know. Rei's struggle with depersonalization and understanding of who she is isn't some alien concept, but something many people struggle with at points in their lives. I think one of the sweetest parts of Evangelion's story is how, because Rei's a clone of Shinji's dead mum Yui, one of the ways her emotions begin to manifest within herself is through maternal instincts. There's the aforementioned Shinji says Rei looked like a mother when she wrung out a rag, which makes Rei inadvertently blush. There's something so rewarding about watching her become more and more human and finding out who she is. And then in Rei III, Rei dies. She goes boom. Rip. But before she does, an angel makes contact with her and sort of corrupts its way into her heart. And here Rei realizes the angel is in her mind, but unlike earlier in the show, she can recognize that she is separate from this creature. She knows better who she is now, and she recognizes the loneliness and sadness in her heart and that she is human, which results in her crying, something which confuses her. Then the angel attacks Shinji by physically manifesting into the desires of Rei's heart, how she wants to be one with Shinji. I think on a first watch you can be like, what the fuck? She had a crush on Shinji? But to me, I think this scene is still about those maternal instincts. A mother wanting to be with her child even till the very end. Well, this is what I think. I might be wrong. I don't know. I don't know. The latter half of this episode is almost more heartbreaking as a new Rei clone has popped out, except she doesn't have any of the memories of her previous body. So all the progress we've seen Rei make on becoming more human and being more alive is reset to zero. But she is still in a world full of the people who have grown to care about her. To see this new Rei, Rei III, enter a world she can't understand, chasing the actions of a previous version of herself that she'll never know, is so tragic. We even get this insanely interesting commentary on what it means to have a soul and what is simply a lifeless husk when Ritsuko blows up all the spare Rei bodies because she is jealous that Gendo pays Rei attention and not her because she is in love with him, and that is also a whole thing? Sorry Ritsuko heads, I love the character, but I just don't have a lot of time to talk about it. Her mum killed a child. I don't have the time. I gotta go. I don't have the time to talk. I gotta go.
And so it's all those things combined. This lacking of understanding of who one is, which can be a suffocating question as you drown to the feelings of depersonalization, to not fitting in and understanding the world around you when it's so clear to everyone else, to a blank slate slowly but surely becoming more human.
When you watch all these things, especially on a repeat viewing, it paints Rei as nothing short but an incredibly unique and interesting character. Wait, the third Rei pops up in Rei III. Is that why the episode's called that? Oh my god!
Rei isn't the only one who struggles with what it means to be human and to experience life. This dark and difficult world is used as a backdrop for these characters to experience the harsh reality of being alive, and what that means to all of them. What does it mean to be a human? Who are we around what people? What does self-worth accomplish? Is it more important to live as a woman or a mother? Is it cowardice to hide yourself in intimacy with another person? Does the end justify the means? And isn't it okay to run away from all the things that make life hard?
We're looping back around and we're talking about Shinji. Shinji gets a bad rap, I think. People think of him as the wah, I can't get in the robot guy, and I guess that's true, but I've always found him so compelling. I think even if you've never struggled with depression before, there are so many aspects about Shinji that can strike true.
At his worst, he indulges in all the things we in real life have to be too courageous to succumb to. Running away, giving up, treating others as things only to satisfy or fix you.
You can be empathetic for the guy, but still admit that he is kind of awful.
The thing that is maybe the most interesting about Shinji is how he struggles to connect with other people. And I mean, it makes sense. His father abandoned him and so he ran away. But throughout the show, he never actively chooses to be in the company of others. It is always just thrust upon him. He doesn't actively seek out friends at school, or a guardian, or a sister, roommate person, but they all fall in front of him and he has to deal with it. While if he got his way, I'm sure he would prefer to just live alone so he could spend every night staring at a ceiling. But instead, he does have a new life, new people, a new city, all while being the closest he has ever been to his father. An emotionally vulnerable venture that only hurts him more as he ends up second fiddle to Rei, barely getting anything out of his dad but a few grunts here and there. There's this tragic scene in episode 15 where Shinji and his dad visit the grave of his mother. It's one of the only times we see the two together outside of the Nev setting, and Gendo says nothing to him really except that there's no pictures of his mother and he has to forget and move on. It's cold, it's blunt, it's an interaction lacking any love or warmth. And even after all that, Shinji still says, if there were to be a singular reason to blame and explain why Shinji's the way he is, it would be his terrible father and lack of a mother. He lacked that essential human connection throughout his early life, and now he doesn't know what to do as he is growing up.
And by the way, yeah, he's growing up. He's 14, and I mean, I'm sure there's some lore reason as to why all the pilots are 14-year-olds, but I always thought it was this really clever narrative choice because that is maybe the most tumultuous time of change in a young adult's life. You're changing from a child into the person you'll be for the rest of your life, all while puberty is like, hey, let's think about nothing but sex so we can repopulate. Yippee! And you're going through mood swings and emotional outbursts, and I don't know about you, but when I think back on that time, it feels so uniquely overwhelming. And that's without the whole piloting a robot to save humanity stuff. Sometimes you think, okay, why can't everyone around Shinji just be a bit nicer to him? That'll make his life easier.
But then we get episode 16, where Misato tries to be his hype man by saying,
"Hi, you are number one!"
And he gets all smiley and giddy as much as it pisses Asuka off. Until later where the angel just completely fucks him over and he gets absorbed into a shadow, and it's the first time we see the show properly examine Shinji's psyche from the inside out. The traditional sense of storytelling goes out the window as we trade it in for a more experimental way of exploring ideas and themes. Voiceover where the character is talking to themselves, a moving white line representing that other voice, flashes of memories from the previous episodes which Shinji reflects on, his father praising him and that other voice immediately scolding him. At one point this other voice tells him, to which Shinji screams in retaliation before telling him again he is running away. A message that has taunted him the whole show, but here feels almost like a direct assault onto his heart. And it hurts and scares Shinji because he knows it is true. Even if it's not the physical sense of leaving, he is turning his heart away from the things that hurt the most.
Although saying that, I think it's an important thing to remember too that the feelings Shinji is going through both in this sequence and in later ones, they're not a puzzle. There's no correct answer that will have Anno come out of your closet to shake your hand and give you a big prize. Oh my god, a 2007 Toyota Corolla? Oh no, you shouldn't have! It's this absolutely accurate depiction of what it feels like to just mentally lose it a little. I don't know if you've ever had a mini crash out before, but this is exactly what it feels like. Going in circles over and over again as messages and ideas plague your brain that only vaguely make sense to you and can only just be reached but never controlled. It's experimental and a far cry from the external viewpoint we got of Shinji's inner workings from earlier in the show, but because of all that, it is such a unique and beautiful way to explore a character's psyche. Anyways, remember a minute ago when I said Shinji's life is already pretty stressful enough without the piloting a robot to save all of mankind thing? Well, okay, so at one point his dad does this whole trickaroo and installs this thing called a dummy plug, which lets the scientist trick the Ava into thinking there is a pilot inside of it when there actually isn't, so they can directly control it instead of telling a 14-year-old what to do. And coincidentally, at the same time, they have found the fourth Evangelion pilot, who turns out to be Shinji's friend Toji. There is a 2-episode build-up where we know the pilot is Toji, everyone else knows the pilot is Toji, except for Shinji. It feels like we, the viewer, are in on this surprise birthday party, except it's not a party, it's this horrifying psychological death trap. No one around Shinji has the guts to tell him that his friend is going to be the new pilot, or they just can't find the right time. Maybe all fearful of how he will react since his mental state isn't always the most reliable. And as the episodes tick on by second, it feels like a bomb is going to go off at any moment. The unsung moment of these 2 episodes is how they set up this romance storyline between Toji and the class rep Hikari, the latter of which having a massive crush on the former who is oblivious to all of it. In a show where people do nothing but hurt each other or use each other or scream in pain or fight larger than life battles, it's really sweet to suddenly have this very soft-spoken love story about a girl who wants to cook some lunch for the boy she likes because she doesn't know how to be more direct and confess her feelings. Anyways, the end of episode 18 is just heart-crushing. As you see the approach of Evangelion Unit 3, which is now turned into an angel, you feel nothing but dread and despair, knowing that Toji is still inside of it and Shinji still doesn't know it's his friend. The Ava moves slowly, its stature intimidatingly full of power, taking Rei and Asuka out in seconds. But it's gonna be okay because Shinji clues on that something isn't right and that there is a pilot still in there. A fact that his dad thinks is negligible, and so he activates the dummy plug. As the controls are taken away from Shinji, it is heartbreaking to watch him beg his father to stop as the Ava ruthlessly rips apart and eviscerates the angel. It claws and rips the blood out and then finally pulls out the dummy plug with Toji still inside. And after one final plea from Shinji, it's crushed, all while that girl is still cooking food for the boy she has a crush on. This leaves Shinji at the start of episode 19 to go, I'm done, for real, fuck all of you, fuck you dad, fuck you Misato, fuck you Evangelions, I'm out! And so he quits / gets fired. Look, it was a mutual thing. And Shinji goes to leave, running away one more time, although after everything he has seen, it doesn't feel unearned or cowardly this time. You probably wouldn't blame yourself if you did the same. But before he can quite leave, another angel attacks. But that's not Shinji's problem anymore. He is just a civilian now, and so he heads to the evacuation shelter. Even as he looks out at the myriad of explosions, he tells himself, His attitude, however, slightly changes when Asuka gets her ass beat and her Ava's head crushes the evac shelter he is in. In his shock horror, maybe he thinks about how he could have done something to stop this. But no, again, he put his foot in the sand. He is not piloting an Ava anymore. That is, until he runs into Kaji, just casually watering his watermelons as a battle rages on in the skies above them. And then Kaji gives Shinji the best motivational speech anyone gives him in the entire show. He is just honest and treats Shinji like an adult. He has no ulterior motive, he doesn't care if he dies because he'll at least get to die doing what he loves, taking care of his watermelons. And as the battle in the sky above continues, with Rei running in with nothing but a nuclear mine, Kaji tells Shinji the unfiltered stakes for the first time. If an angel comes in contact with Adam, it will be the end of the world. Only an Evangelion can stop that. There is a very clear divide between the first and second half of this show, with the first half in general being a bit more lighthearted and feeling heroic and epic, and with the second half being heavier and more psychologically introspective. But one of my favorite details about this split is how in the first half, piloting an Eva seems really cool and heroic. From the music to the poses to the way they defeat the angels, it seems hard and tough for sure, but it also feels valiant. In contrast, there's rarely a moment in the second half where piloting an Eva doesn't feel horrifying. Like it's a monster that we should be scared of. This is one of the rare moments where it gets to feel heroic again. Shinji decides in the midst of a horrific battle to stop running away, and he rushes to Nev on foot. He then calls out to his father, mirroring this moment from the first episode, and begs him to let him pilot Unit 1. When asked why, he declares confidently,
Evangelion 初号機のパイロット碇シンジです。
For a character who has struggled so much with not running away and confronting the harsh reality in front of him, it's this wildly cathartic moment to see Shinji do this, especially after a pretty reasonable reason to run away. And so Shinji gets to be a hero as he barges his way through Nev HQ to save all the scientists. He then takes the angel up the launch pad and into the sky, and then the tone begins to shift. This no longer looks like the face of a hero, but one drunk on some violent power. But before he can get too intoxicated, the power of the Eva runs out. The music cuts and Shinji realizes he is doomed. He begs and begs for the Eva to move before being hit by the angel again and again and again and again and again. Shinji begs more and more and more and more and more until he says, and then there's a heartbeat and the Eva comes to life. But it doesn't feel heroic. What was supposed to be a mechanical robot animates like a wild beast. It begins eating the angel and it's portrayed as nothing less than disgusting and horrifying. The Eva howls into the night sky and then the episode ends. What follows next is an entire half of an episode dedicated to one of Shinji's introspective explorative sequences, with the other half dedicated to the Nev scientist and Misato desperately trying to figure out a way to rescue Shinji's physical form after he disappeared into the Eva as it went crazy mode. What Shinji has to confront in this sequence is a dreamlike flashing of images that fall between his fingers as he tries to make a rational statement about the people and situation around him. Why is he fighting these enemies? Does he want to keep running away? Why does he do any of the things that he does? But the most difficult thing Shinji has to combat in this sequence is his connections to other people. Like we briefly talked about earlier, throughout the entire series, Shinji struggles to connect to other people, often falling within himself or outright rejecting others. That's not to say he doesn't care about other people, because he does, as evident with how he reacts to Rei being alive at the end of episode 2, or how even in this Psyche sequence he claims the only way to get people to say good things to him is by piloting the Eva, showing he does care for others' opinions. And all he wishes for is someone in his life to be kind to him. And then there is this sequence of the three girls from the show, naked of their clothes and on a loop as they move closer and closer to Shinji, saying over and over again, For a boy who constantly keeps others at arm's length and rejects any type of intimacy that he himself can't control, this almost feels like a taunting, mocking attack. The one thing he struggles with the most, but deep down secretly wishes for, being swung in front of his face like an out-of-reach carrot. It's a beautiful episode that cleverly reuses cells of animation to save on budget and time, but all within the context of this rapid-fire experimental storytelling, and it creates such a unique and interesting watch. Because it's just Shinji over and over again trying to grapple with his reality, which even as a viewer isn't always easy to track, because they pull this trick on you where the entry plug opens and it cuts to the hospital, the one with the one's unfamiliar ceiling, which then is still a part of the reality inside Shinji's mind. Haha, got you! You thought it was safe! The sequence then ends with this beautiful speech by Misato, where she tells Shinji you can't change the past, who or what you were, but what you need to do is think hard about what you want to become and choose that for yourself. Which is an answer to his troubles, one he has already been told before by others. But one Shinji lacks the courage and strength to achieve. We then cut to the real Misato in the real world, sobbing into Shinji's plug suit, the only thing of him that remains. She says heartbreakingly, and that goes all the way back to what we were talking about with the science of man versus the power of God, and how that thought of Misato's may be echoed by one of the other characters. His dead wife. It's his dead wife. That's why he's doing all this.
Also, Shinji survived, by the way. So a lot has happened to poor Shinji by this point. He was abandoned by his father after his mother died in a freak accident. He went to live with his teacher where he states that nothing really happened and he just had to live. At 14, he's randomly contacted by his father after not seeing him for 3 years, and then he is told he has to pilot this giant robot to fight these monstrous angels, and also all the pain your robot feels you feel, which makes it psychologically scarring, and he does that a couple of times. Sees a lot of explosions, gets punched at school for piloting the Eva when he never wanted to in the first place, gets slapped by the girl who is the favorite of his dad, ends up in hospital 100 times, gets yelled at by everyone around him because he doesn't know how to live around other people, runs away, comes back, is constantly belittled by his roommate, a roommate who then kisses him and gags afterwards. He falls inside a giant shadow which traps him within his mind, is forced to watch as his hands kill his best friend, sees his 2 friends get blown up and decapitated in front of him, watches his robot go beast mode again and start eating the angel in front of him, gets trapped inside the Eva again but for a month, and this time full of even more psychological introspective that has no end, sees Rei explode, and then like a day later finds out she was a clone, but then watches all the spare clone bodies disintegrate. But yeah, get in the robot, pussy. Shinji's life sucks. But what is so interesting is that none of those things are the cause of his depression or state of mental being, but we watch him navigate all this stuff whilst being in this condition. And you really feel for the guy. You think, just once, I want Shinji to have a lucky break. I want something nice to happen to him that doesn't result in his life getting worse. And then Kaoru shows up. Episode 24, the beginning of the end, or knocking on heaven's door. Shinji stares out at the lake created by Rei's sacrificial explosion. He mutters to himself about how everyone from school, everyone he knows, have all left the city to find a new home for themselves. Cue Ode to Joy being sung by this grey-haired anime boy, Kaoru Nagisa. Kaoru stands out from all the other characters in the show because he is just instantly really nice to Shinji, which Shinji is taken aback by. And also, he is plot relevant. He's replacing Asuka as the pilot of Unit 2 because... But oddly enough, he is perfect at it. Then he runs into Shinji, who is sort of bumming around, avoiding going home when they decide to go to the bath together. And it's here where, before Shinji can even get a word in, Kaoru starts yapping about every problem Shinji has had.
怖いのかい？人と触れ合うのが。他人を知らなければ裏切られることも、互いに傷つくこともない。でも、寂しさを忘れることもないよ。
Who the hell starts a conversation like that? I just sat down. Before Shinji can retaliate in any way, Kaoru closes the gap between them, placing his hand on Shinji's. The intimacy Shinji is always so scared to reach out for, here it has been given to him and for free. He then stands up and says,
心が痛がりだから生きるのも辛いと感じる。ガラスのように繊細だね。
And then he says to Shinji,
好きってことさ。
Ooh, you like boys. No. It's very abrupt and out of nowhere, but it is nice to have this momentary escape of happiness for Shinji, where he gets to meet someone who understands him, how hard it is to be in a world full of people that he is too scared or too unwilling to connect to because of the fear of the pain it will bring. Someone who understands the way he thinks but is also just kind to him. And because of that, he is one of the only characters Shinji opens up to about his life, always being so closed off to all the other main characters. And this ease of opening up about himself takes even him off guard. And in this moment of having his guard down, he gets hit with the rizziest line of all time.
僕は君に会うために生まれてきたのかもしれない。
Oh my god! And it's just so nice for Shinji to have this, even if it's so late in the game. Anyway, so Kaoru is the final angel. It's like, of course you couldn't let Shinji be happy, not even for one episode. Now he has to fight the one person he liked, the one person who liked him, the one person who he wasn't scared of opening up to. And now he has to kill him. And it's just heartrending. Shinji in particular is so caught up in the effects of the greater plot, which he doesn't really fully understand. In juxtaposition to Misato, his role as the eyes for us audience are more to examine how psychologically one goes through life. And so like a football, he is tossed around from traumatic event to traumatic event, trying to process everything whilst also dealing with the difficulty of being alive. There's this really funny quasi-metatextual line where Kaoru explains that in AT field, those orange shields the angels have been using the whole show are actually the walls of the heart that people use to close themselves off from each other, and that Shinji must have known that the whole time, to which Shinji replies by screaming, which I think is just kind of fun. Anyway, Shinji has to kill him now. And it's not because he wants revenge for the betrayal, but because Kaworu asks him to. He tells Shinji that meeting him made him truly happy and then thanks him. Words of gratitude that aren't usually accompanied by someone whose life is about to be ended. We then are given this now infamous wide shot of Unit 1 holding Kaworu in its hand. A shot that lasts for just over a minute. Again, I'm gonna bring up that yeah, this could have just been a nifty way for them to save on their time and budget constraints, but even if that is true, it works so well for this moment. Because at this point of the show, 24 episodes in, we don't need to see Shinji inside the cockpit. The sobs or screams or words he is muttering under his breath are as loud to us the viewer as they would ever be, despite us not being able to hear them. And so as we sit with Shinji on this prolonged shot, we feel the pain that he is going through in this moment, despite never being let in to see what he is thinking. And it's just so tragic. One nice guy comes along and Shinji has to kill him. It's not a monster, it's not some other robot, it's not even taken out of his hand by remote control. Shinji himself, of his own free will, has to kill the one person he let into his heart. And so he does. Thus begins maybe the most infamous ending to an animated show ever. Episodes 25 and 26. Do you love me and take care of yourself? I don't even really know how to describe these last two episodes. I can sit here and literally tell you how it's a very abstract two-part finale where traditional storytelling is once again thrown out the window in favor of this experimental visual experience where characters and their thoughts are represented by various images and repeated cells of animation, and how the entire thing in reference to the narrative is in existence by something called the Human Instrumentality Project. But apart from that, I don't really know what I could say that you couldn't just get from you yourself watching it. And I mean, that kind of applies to all of Evangelion itself. Yeah, I mean, it can be fun to have the plot told to you by a friend, or in this case, a YouTuber from Australia that you've never met, but so much of Evangelion is special because of the way that you experience it. And these two episodes have changed so much in my heart over my time experiencing this show. I was a late watcher. I mean, I grew up watching anime, but this show always slipped my radar somehow. Except that is for my childhood friend's older sister, who just loved this show and one time told us the entire plot and then popped the DVD in and showed us her favorite scenes and moments. I remember her showing me the first angel catching the missile in this very impressively animated shot. And then she showed us one of the characters' Avas getting their arm cut off, but they too could feel the pain. And then she showed us even super spoilery stuff and the context for why she did this in 2014 or roughly when I was 12, I don't remember. But because of that, I have these faint images in my brain of a missile being caught, a pilot clutching their arm, Shinji choking Asuka, and two boys playing the piano. But what's interesting is I sort of forgot all that. I buried them deep in my memory until like episode 9 or 10, where suddenly midway through an episode, these memories returned to me like straight to the front of my brain like a bullet through glass. And it made me kind of excited and intrigued. How could this pathetic boy and this German girl who annoys him slightly be in a situation where he tries to kill her? And so I kept watching the show for that very first time in the year of 2023. It was at my old apartment, 2 apartments ago now, and I'd watch an episode or 2 late at night when the world had gone to sleep. What I remember most about that first initial watch is that I loved the first half. I loved the triumphant heroic battles and the way it dealt with Shinji's depression amidst this richly detailed world, all with this unraveling mystery that I could barely comprehend but was intrigued by nonetheless. And then as it got into the second half, as it got more and more introspective and got closer and closer to that finale episode with no resolution to the plot in mind, I got mad. I finished the show and I was like, what? What the fuck? What was that? All this cool buildup of characters and story which they then throw away for this weird introspective ending? And then I swore to that day that I didn't like Evangelion, that the ending had ruined it for me and that I'd wasted my time. But then I kept thinking about the show. Every single day, every single week, every single month for the rest of that year. And as I moved to a new house and a new chapter of my life, I kept looking back on Evangelion as this wholly unique and incredible experience. The way it dives into all these characters who on the inside are struggling so much against themselves, and then on the outside are struggling so much against the balance of their relation to one another, I just thought it was brilliant. Even if the last 2 episodes throw away the entire narrative for the sake of resolving one characters. But then, haven't I just done the same thing right now? A million minutes of this review / video essay / whatever thing, and I throw it away at the last second to talk about my life. Gotcha.
But I guess that's because, I don't know, I guess I'm still a bit afraid to talk about these last 2 episodes. I've been afraid to talk about this whole show. What if I don't do it justice? What if I'm just repeating what everyone else says? What if I'm not repeating what everyone else says? I've woken up every day for the last 2 weeks trying to write this script with dread filled in my stomach as I looked up at the mountain of work ahead of me. And I wanted to give up so many times. I wanted to quit and just go fish on a mountain or something. But here we are, almost at the end. And so in episode 25, we begin a deep dive into our main cast of characters. But because we're in the midst of the Human Instrumentality Project, the thing CLA have been secretly aiming for the whole show, a mode of existence in which everyone's hearts and minds have become one, we get this unique perspective on these characters, different from every other one of these sequences earlier in the show, as the character state of constant connection means they are also commenting on each other's thoughts. So Misato, Rei, Asuka, Shinji, and everyone else, it's like they're all on trial against each other. The walls to their heart and to their deepest, darkest insecurities and fears and thoughts are open for everyone to see. So the ugly truths they try to hide from one another, such as the indulging of selfish intimacy, is met by the eyes of the ones they try to hide it from. The case of Asuka Langley Soryu, a girl who wants to not rely on anyone else yet fails to be on her own. Wants to stop crying, yet tears still come. She hates everyone, yet she hates being alone. The case of Rei III. Who is she? The different versions of herself converse, but they're all different from each other, despite all being Rei III, shaped by the different people around them and their own lived experience. The case of Misato Katsuragi. She hates her father and hated being a good child for him, and how she wants to be dirty and so she sleeps with Kaji. Her walls are down. And then we have Shinji, still grieving from the death of Kaworu. In this episode, he is sort of just floating around between everyone's stories whilst having the occasional moment of not knowing what to do, claiming he only pilots the Eva because other people tell him to. It's not until the end of the episode where we learn that the state of being they all exist in at the moment was brought about by Shinji. He wished for a world where nobody could save him. A world of destruction and death, one that is returned to nothingness, a closed-off world to protect his fragile heart. And then the episode ends. I think it's a very clever and unique way to begin the ending of the series with some really clever reusing of previous assets. But to me, I think this episode sort of slightly falls flat in relation to the second one, which does everything that this one is doing, but just better. So no hate to the episode 25 fans, but you guys are wrong and smelly! And now it's time for the finale. Take care of yourself. Unlike the last episode, this one revolves mostly around Shinji, with the other characters sort of guiding him along to his destination. The episode repeats a lot of the things that have happened to Shinji throughout the whole show. Him running away, putting his walls up to people, hating himself but not quite wanting to die, his fear of abandonment, and the way he reactively pushes it all back on the people around him, saying that they all do the same things he is guilty of, to which they agree. There's a part a little into the episode where Shinji keeps declaring how he is useless and worthless before saying that is why he pilots the Eva, because that is what made him special, which Asuka then chimes in and echoes. And I know we sort of glossed over it when we talked about Asuka earlier, but in the case of these two, it feels like the Eva is a pretty clear substitute for any type of talent. And I wonder if Anno is bleeding through here with piloting an Eva being a replacement for his artistry in animation, how he feels he is nothing special without it, even though it pains him and hurts him to keep doing it. And it's a thought that leads Shinji to admitting out loud that his life has zero value. We then see a shot of a phone, where unlike a couple episodes ago where he was emitting the voices of his friends all cheering him on, now in this spiral of self-hatred Shinji has fallen into, it's his friends all telling him how much they hate him. The episode then continues with more and more of the circling around of Shinji's thoughts, all accompanied by the most incredible and memorable visuals. Again, if you've ever sort of mentally crashed out before, this is what it feels like. Over and over again, a flurry of feelings and emotions springing to your mind, until suddenly Shinji is reduced from an anime character to a simple flat drawing. As he learns to see how he is perceived by himself and the others around him, his shape continues to change, seeing for the first time how he fits into this world. People joke that they definitely ran out of money by this bit, but it's such an effective and jarring change and it just works so brilliantly. The flat, simple, rough design of these characters, them being stripped down to their bare
necessities work so well as they all tell Shinji that the world and himself is just how he perceives it. And he can change the world and himself if he changes the way he sees them, as we see the animation changed. He has the power to will his life into what he wants it to be, no matter how vague and impossible a task it may seem, which is beautifully shown with this sequence of Shinji floating and then feeling a little bit of comfort as a floor is drawn beneath him for a bit of stability. As he realizes he has the power of self-change within himself, we just get this incredibly animated sequence. It's just, oh, chef's kiss, mwah, so well done. And I know it all seems abstract as the episode suddenly obsesses over the idea of self-image in a world of perception where Shinji is alone, but it all does relate back to everything Shinji has been going through. He hates himself because he sees himself as a coward and dishonest and meek, someone not worthy of his dad's love, which is why he was abandoned by him, someone who doesn't deserve to exist. But here, his friends are nudging him on to tell him, no, you are the one holding yourself back. You're not defined by the shackles of your own mind. You're not defined by your past. You can change at any point. It doesn't matter what came before, but only what will come next and how you want to venture forward down that path. You in this moment aren't the definitive only version of yourself. You can be anything that you want.
Baka Shinji!
What the fuck? We're in normal anime episode now, full of all the cliches and tropes of a childhood best friend with a big crush on the main character and the girl running late with a bit of toast in her mouth. And although it is just Shinji seeing that it is possible for a different version of himself to exist, it's maybe my favorite part of the episode. After everything awful and messed up and traumatic these kids have had to go through, it's this big moment of relief and a feeling of comfort seeing Shinji and the others be normal anime protagonists. They even mirror a scene from earlier in the show where Misato rocks up to school all styled up, but this time Shinji gets to be one of the happy-go-lucky pervy young teens. And this guy in the back gets to be the new Shinji. How does it feel to be the main character? Not everyone can handle the responsibility of the chair. It's just such a fun scene, so far removed from the tethered reality of the show, but one that is so calming to me in a weird way. And it's really fun to see Rei's Japanese actress flex her vocal range. And I'm gonna need 700 episodes of this reality plus 6 non-canon spin-off movies ASAP. Thanks, Anno. As we leave the scene, panning over the literal script of what we just watched, we begin the ending of the show. That was just one of the possible realities of what Shinji could be. And he realizes there could even be a world where he isn't an Eva pilot. And then, still frozen in his chair one last time, Shinji tries to run away. The world is still too harsh, he says. And then every single supporting character from the show comes to his side. He tries to run away again. Doesn't everyone hate me, Shinji asks? And like the catchphrase it has become, Asuka retorts him in the face with, "Anta baka?" But I really do hate myself, he says. So Rei tells him, if you hate yourself, you can never be capable of loving other people. He deflects by saying he's a sneak and a coward, he's dishonest and a weakling. And finally Misato chimes in. If you understand yourself, you can be kinder to yourself, right? Shinji says one more time, I hate who I am. But then they all come together to say, a crack. Another crack. He begins clenching his fist, completing the visual motif set up so many episodes ago now that he has the resolve to. And then standing up, no longer running away, Shinji confidently declares, an explosion onto an open blue world, one so different from the closed up one of interrogation an episode ago. Everyone from the show applauds him and then says the now famous, seeing Shinji's smile, which we've been teased with every single episode in the opening number, finally realizing he has a place in this world and deserves to live, it's hard to amount into words how beautiful it is. Every time I watch it now, I tear up. Evangelion is about so many things. Big robots and killer angels and children being traumatized and mankind trying to harness the power of gods. But in between all that, it's about a kid just trying to navigate the harshness that is being alive. He's not a perfect person, but Shinji does struggle. And to see him finally, with a smile on his face, embrace himself and take that step towards the future with everyone cheering him on, it's just brilliant. And I honestly think it's one of the most incredible endings of anything ever. what the fuck was that? But on my first time viewing, I was like, what the fuck was that? And I'm not the only one. It's such a common experience to be thrown off balance by this ending, even to this day. Even back when it premiered, a bunch of people wrote into Studio Gainax to air out their frustrations. And quite funnily, the original English voice of Shinji, Spike Spencer, recorded this impromptu rant.
There's some things that are still unresolved here, guys. How do I get home? You ran out of ink too, didn't you bastards?
And I don't think it's wrong to be mad at this ending. The entire show is building up towards a grand finale with Seele and Gendo's plan and everything all the other characters are going through, and the original plan was for that to be the last 2 episodes. But they ran out of time/money, and also I think Anno just got more interested in exploring Shinji's psyche, which I think can be frustrating on a first viewing because, I mean, yeah, Shinji does get this incredibly memorable and unique finale to his character arc, but everyone else's just sort of gets thrown away. We see brief glimpses of Misato and Ritsuko being dead. What? And Asuka is just under a lake in her Eva somehow? What? After everything she has been through? What a terrible ending for her. Which is why a year later, the quote-unquote real finale was released to cinemas. The End of Evangelion. But I do want to say quickly before we get into the End of Evangelion is that once you've seen it and you have the confusion of what happened to everyone answered, once that hunger has been quenched, it makes the original ending far less jarring. And on repeat viewings, I vastly prefer it as the finale to the series. Because a lot of messed up stuff happens in End of Evangelion. And for me, despite the fact that we only see its resolution through one character, I think Take Care of Yourself is the more cathartic and emotionally satisfying conclusion to Evangelion. But both endings are good, by the way. Like, they're both good, okay? Let's get into the movie. In July of 1997, The End of Evangelion released into Japanese cinemas, and to set the tone for what this film is, I think it's best to play the Japanese adverts that were broadcast on TV. If fans were to reject the happy ending of the original series, then it almost feels like the End of Evangelion is trying to reject those fans by giving them the most heavy, depressing ending to the series imaginable. And it kicks off like that right from the first minute. If the End of Evangelion is known for anything, it's for its opening, in which a defeated Shinji looks over Asuka's comatose body. He begs her to wake up. He begs for her help. He begs her and begs her and begs her to save him. And then in this pulling of her, he rips open her gown and exposes her chest. And then, I mean, you already probably know, he then jacks off into his hand and then mutters to himself, I don't want to be known as the hospital scene defender, but I am a little sick of the scene being memed to death and people writing off the whole movie because of it. I have a friend who accidentally started Evangelion by watching the movie first and were just completely thrown off. And I have other friends who say they liked the movie but thought the opening was completely unnecessary and how disgusting it was. And I'm not here to dictate what you can and cannot like, and I'm definitely not here to condone Shinji's actions, just so we're very clear. But as a narrative tool, it's maybe the perfect way to start this movie. Let's play that TV advert again. This is going to be a heavy movie with a very depressed main character whose last action was killing the one person in the world he liked, who liked him. That's why he goes to Asuka. Just like the viewer, he wishes to go back to those earlier times. When, yeah, Asuka was mean to him, but they did a fun dance montage together. That's why he shakes her and begs her to wake up, open her eyes, call him an idiot, and they can go back to before everything got so messed up, so he can run away from reality once again. But instead, this awful act shows us that Shinji is in his lowest, worst state that he has ever been, and is a warning to us, the viewer, of what we're about to be shown over the next 90 minutes. It's supposed to be uncomfortable, and it's supposed to be disgusting. And it's supposed to make us dislike Shinji, which retroactively makes all the times he talked about how awful he was in the series actually have some meat behind it. And without harping on about the scene too much, there is this sort of running through line throughout the show with Shinji and sexuality. Unlike all the other boys, he doesn't ogle or act like a pervert, much to the confusion of his friends. But it's not that he's averse to it or above it, as seen by the scene in Rei's apartment. It's just that he only engages in it when he thinks he is alone and can control it. Because sex is the closest form of intimacy you can have with another person. And what is the one thing Shinji struggles to do the entire show? Get close to other people. To be sexual with another person is incredibly vulnerable, and to borrow language from the show, it really requires you to lower the walls of your heart, which can be really scary. And that is why we spent so much time exploring that concept with Misato, and it's why we only see Shinji engage with it in solitude and selfishly and disgustingly treating Asuka as nothing more than an object for his sexual desire, which he realizes is wrong when he finishes and looks down at his hand. And it's for all those reasons that this is, as disturbing as it is, the perfect way to open Shinji's story in this movie. And then we cut to our title card, episode 25, Air. Which is important to know because the movie is kind of a retelling or like an alternate view of the show's ending. It's not the case of one ending is true and one ending is false, but that they sort of both happen at the same time. Which I personally love, but what I don't love is seeing everyone in the fucking dumps. It's not just Shinji and Asuka who are having it rough. Rei, Misato, Ritsuko, all the nerve scientists, everyone's just really bummed. Which, by the way, they're only about to get more bummed because their headquarters are about to be, we are fucking under attack by the government, backed by CLA who want to take over the HQ and make the scenario go according to their plan. God, I hate the government! There's a shot later on of the Prime Minister and he has this massive fuck-off sized clock. Fuck you, bro! If you were miffed that the ending of the series didn't have enough action, then they are not going to disappoint here, because as soon as decisive battle kicks in with Misato confidently walking down the hallway, the invasion upon Nev HQ begins. There are explosions and gunfire and secret ninja troops, and it's so cool until it stops being cool and just becomes a stomach-twisting massacre. You don't really get to see the full scale of the HQ and its staff in the show, so here it's almost hard to stomach as we see a multitude of innocent workers trying to hide and save each other as they're all shot mercilessly. The scientists we do know immediately get their handguns out and go into defense mode, which Ibuki struggles with because these soldiers aren't the still targets they shot at in practice, these are real human beings, even if they are trying to kill them. The only problem, apart from the invasion, is that they need to protect the pilots. Rei is fucking nowhere as usual, so don't worry, but they shove Asuka in her comatose state into Unit 2 and drop her at the bottom of a lake. And Shinji is, oh my god, being depressed under a stairwell. That's so out of character for him. So Misato has to leg it to make it to him before he gets murdered, and when she finds him, she then gets to save him by doing this super cool run and gun moment. And just to be clear, this movie as a whole doesn't glorify action, often painting it as something horrifying and terrifying. In some of this part, it's just so cool. So Misato is tasked with dragging this just lifeless, depressed boy and stuffing him inside of Unit 1 to keep him safe. I think another thing that people don't like about this movie is just how depressed and passive Shinji is. And at times it can even emit a little giggle when Misato literally drags him across the ground. But again, that is why we saw this. Seeing him at his lowest and knowing he still has to find the will and courage to not be like this, which we know from the ending of the show he will find, invokes a harsh whiplash as we wonder how he can possibly go from this to the boy who confidently declares he deserves to be in this world. Anyways, while all of this is going on, Asuka is sitting in her Eva at the bottom of a lake. She is then rudely interrupted by some missiles that are dropped on her, which sort of shakes her out of her coma. And so now conscious, she speaks for the first time. And just for a recap in case anyone forgot or I don't know, took a break while watching this long-ass video! Asuka was full of pride and ego, had that pride and ego hurt a little, and then a little more, and the more she cared about it, the further she fell until she started crashing out big time, and then it got worse, and then she started hating everyone, and then her mind got defiled by an angel which brought up all of her trauma about her dead mother and how no one will see her as an adult, which was her coping strategy for all this, and then she got decapitated. So not the best for her. I think what's frustrating about the show is that it ends Asuka's arc in the hospital, with her just lying there, dead behind the eyes. I know I said this slightly before, but I just want to reiterate that while it's great that Shinji gets such an incredible conclusion, other characters, Asuka maybe most especially, really get done a bit dirty. But that all changes after these missiles stir her awake, and she becomes aware of the world again. And so in Evangelion Unit 2, at the bottom of a lake, under fire, she cries to herself. Over and over again, she mutters this to herself, so quiet that not even another soul could possibly hear it. That is, until another voice creeps in, which gets louder and louder, matching the crescendo of Asuka's voice. And they both get louder and louder until it hits both you and Asuka that it's her mother. And then she realizes her mother had been there with her all along. She was in the Eva watching over her this whole time. Because basically the souls of people's mums are inside of the Evas. Don't worry about that. And Asuka realizes this and she grabs her mother's hand and then Unit 2 activates. And after everything Asuka has gone through, after the crash out and the spiral and the depression and how hard your heart breaks for this girl, it is the biggest cathartic release in the entire world to see Asuka rise out of the ocean. As the euphoric choir kicks in and she lifts the giant ship to block the incoming missiles which she then throws back at them, it's one of the most enthralling moments of the entire series. Seeing her smile again as she absolutely decimates this army, realizing her mum was always there, always loving her, always protecting her, it's so emotional. And then you get to see Asuka just kick butt. And after everything Asuka has been through, seeing her like this, happy and unrestricted and free finally from her self-imposed imprisonment, it's just so rewarding. But Seele, remember those big dogs, aren't too happy about all of this, so they send out their friends, aka the mass-produced Eva series, which you might know from this Robin Williams movie.
Wow. What does he do?
Well, he's a good guy, he can fly, and he has a silver sword that can kill bad guys.
So with her umbilical cable cut and running solely on emergency power, Asuka only has 3.5 minutes to take down 9 of these enemies. Do you remember earlier how I said Asuka is the story of a girl who simply needs to lock in and fails to do so? Yeah, that's until right now, because she locks the fuck in. Meanwhile, Shinji is still being a depressed little guy, and Misato is dragging him to Unit 1 before, oops, she gets shot. She shoves him against a wall, and in her dying breath, she tries one last time to motivate Shinji. Not to do what she wants, or to pilot an Eva, or with any selfish ulterior motive, she just wants him to be able to stand on his own 2 legs and choose for himself, which he rejects. He tells her how he is worthless, how he did that to Asuka, how he killed Kaoru, he should just do nothing and be nothing. And so then Misato is like, okay.
Then die.
She tells him, I get it, you hate yourself, but when you hurt others, it hurts yourself more, so you can go forward and make amends to that. And then he screams at her in retaliation. And that just enrages her in a way we've seen so rarely from Misato. In this rage, seeing someone she does care about who also reminds her of a younger, weaker version of herself, she gives him this beautiful speech, one she maybe should have given a long time ago, about how life is about making mistakes and fucking up and regretting them, which has been her entire life. A cycle of self-loathing, but within that cycle, you make progress each time. Every time you fail, you learn and then you stand back up and you grow from it for the next time you fail. So you can't just sit around and do nothing. You have to take that next step forward. It's this beautiful speech that also feels like the climax of their relationship as a pseudo mother and son, and what the fuck? Why are you kissing him? Ew, ew, ew! What the fuck? I think this is a top tier Misato moment, instantly spoiled by the worst ever Misato moment. Bro, Misato Mondays are cancelled. I've just never personally been able to wrap my head around why she does this here. And I know that might sound silly when I spent a pretty long time defending something pretty horrid too, but I just don't get it. Most people's argument is that Misato is always using her body to get what she wants, as you can see in the first episode when she sent Shinji a postcard that says, hey, look at my tits. But apart from that, I struggle a little bit to think of another moment in the series where she does that for anyone, let alone for Shinji. Pretty quickly, she goes into this maternal role for him, and he rejects any of her advances at comfort. The only time she ever engages in those acts are with Kaji, which we went over a bunch. So for me, personally, I just don't really understand why she kisses him here as motivation. It always felt super out of place, but also good. Like I said earlier, this series isn't a puzzle with a bunch of simple answers. Some bits make sense to you and some don't. That's art. I actually kind of like it and stuff when not every single facet makes sense, as it leaves you pondering and thinking far after you finish watching.
And if you do have a read or take on this, please let me know what you think. I can't really make a video about why everyone is so obsessed with Evangelion if it's only from my viewpoint, I guess.
And so after being kissed, Shinji is sent up the elevator to Unit 1, and Misato bleeds out.
I do think one thing that gets overlooked because of Misato's decision to do that
is that from this point forward, she is always with Shinji in the form of the cross necklace she wore. In the elevator, up in the Eva, and right in the ending in the film, Misato is now always looking over Shinji, or maybe something he can look at to remember her and what she taught him, in a very similar way to how that cross was given to her by her father right before he died. Finally, in her own way, Misato did become Shinji's parent. It's like poetry, it rhymes.
Anyways, back up to Asuka and she's still kicking ass, but it doesn't feel triumphant or cathartic like it did earlier. In fact, it feels pretty poignant and almost desperate, but she still gets the job done. All 9 mass-produced Evas are defeated. Until out of nowhere a lance is thrown at her, and even with the new ability to produce an AT field, it pierces right through her skull. I wince every goddamn time. The one brief moment of Asuka getting to be happy again is over as her Eva powers off and she begs at the control schemes. Even she can't escape the despair of Evangelion, even in a moment that felt like a reprieve for her. This is the tragedy of Asuka. And as she sits there docile, begging for the Eva to move again so she can continue to live and fight, all the mass-produced Evas animate back to life. Whilst immobile and stuck in a giant machine, like ravaging birds, they begin eating at her, ripping her guts out like animals, which Asuka can feel every single moment of. In one final attempt at a survival, Asuka wills the Eva back to life. Her hand reaching out to the sky, she chants over and over again, cursing them for threatening to end her life when she finally has found a reason to keep going. I don't want to die. Dies. This is the end of Asuka. And then we cut to Shinji, who still can't muster up the confidence to get into his Eva. Ibuki screams at him over the comms that Asuka is dead, but even this won't stir him out of his daze. The extinguishing of his last lifeline, the one thing he was selfishly depending on to return him back to normal, even that won't get him out of his self-imposed apathetic prison. And then suddenly the hand of Unit 1 comes to life. Because remember how the mums are in the Evas? Yeah, Yui, his mum, is in there, and even she's like, bro, get in the fucking robot. And so finally he does, but something's different. This time Unit 1 is going crazy. It's like the devil incarnate with these giant wings and this powerful storm cloud bellowing around him. Amidst the storm and still in a daze, Shinji looks up. And when he does, he sees what remains of Asuka. A body torn limb from limb, and then a scream so loud it can still be heard over the howling winds. Roll credits. This is not a very fun movie. Also, what the fuck is happening? Why are the credits rolling? Why did I just watch 45 minutes of the most depressing scenes in the series? Why did Unit 1 go berserk? Is everyone dead? What's going on? And why are the credits rolling? The end of Evangelion is supposed to debilitate you. It's not a happy ride. Even the brief moment of triumph we get with Asuka is cruelly cut short. And this intense Act 1 finale, which leads into the credits and acts more like an intermission, shock you and give you nothing more than 3 minutes or so to just sit there and go, no, what the fuck is happening? Well, Gendo is about to finish his ultimate master plan of enacting the Human Instrumentality Project, which is this ploy to merge all human souls into one so no one is alone, and it's a way to advance humanity to the next evolutionary step. I guess. Somehow. But also, he just wants to do it so he can be reunited with his wife once again. And to trigger this, Gendo needs Adam and Lilith to merge, and so he has Adam's embryo in his hand, which Kaji stole from him all the way back in Asuka Strikes, and he needs to put it into Rei, who has the soul of Lilith in her body, and ugh. Ew, man, what are you doing? I'm so fucking sick of you people. In this great moment for Rei, she rejects Gendo, severing his hand in the process. After an entire series of Rei tackling with learning to become human, whilst always catching strays that she is the commander's puppet, it's so nice for her here in the last moment to stand up for herself and do something that she wants, which at this point is to go towards Shinji, the only person in the entire show who was ever nice to her. She's no longer taking orders from someone, but instead is taking the first step towards her life.
This one simple moment is such a nice little button to wrap up the story of Rei Ayanami. If I have criticism at all towards a series, it's that Rei doesn't really get enough to do. I think her character is super interesting and unique, but because of her nature, she's often on the back burner for a lot of the show, and I think only gets occasional glimpses to shine. I actually really loved that about the manga and the Rebuild movies, where they really explore the idea of her character in more depth, and I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, Shinji is still up in his Eva, kind of reeling from all the stuff he saw. It's then at this point that Rei, now in the body of Lilith, morphs out of the earth to be able to reach Shinji in Unit 1. On the DVD cover for the movie, it has a quote by Wizard magazine which reads, "A visual tour de force and a mesmerizing climax to one of the greatest anime series of all time." And I think that is such a brilliant tagline because you will see stuff in this movie that you have never seen in a movie before and probably never will again. Even Shinji is excited by it. He's elated! But no, everything he is seeing is fucked up and weird, and even the CLA members comment on how Shinji's ego is now completely shattered. Wait, was that their plan the whole time? I can't keep track anymore! And because of how messed up everything is, Shinji just completely rejects it all, and look, fair enough. Until Rei does a sneaky and morphs into the shape of Kaoru, and suddenly Shinji is at comfort again. The usage of a person that Shinji could lower his walls to and feel safe with is this really nasty trick used to enact out their plan. And as the Rei, Lilith, Kaoru entity thing lures Shinji into a false sense of security, you feel really bad for this poor kid who's just been caught in the middle of all this. And as everything begins, we cut to our minor characters who really help ground this larger-than-life scene in reality. There's this poignant moment where Ibuki grasps Aoba and asks him, it's a small blink and you'll miss it moment, but it's always been one that has just broken my heart a little. These people have been working towards whatever this is for the last years, maybe. But unlike the secret CLA members or the commander or even his little pet that is also in love with his wife and is kind of being a cuck for the entire show, these people don't have some higher plan, they're just doing their job, probably counting down until their next day off or retirement. They're regular people like you and me, caught in the crossfire of the desire of a handful of old men who are biting off way more than they should chew. And so it's a small moment, but it always punches me in the gut. Also, I didn't say it earlier, but there was a joke when the military guy is looking at everything happening in the sky and goes, and then immediately gets blown up. I take it back, maybe this is a fun movie. Back up in the Eva, Shinji is experiencing ecstasy as the Kaoru entity wraps itself around Unit 1. Maybe intimacy is cool. Wouldn't it be crazy if the movie was making a point about how it could be weaponized to achieve an ulterior motive? We then hear the voice of Shinji's mother. And now it's time for the second half proper. What I love about this movie is that, yeah, it totally is a rejection of the fans who were miffed at the original ending, but it also sticks true to what made Evangelion so special and gives us all these cool new introspective character sequences. Like, we start by seeing Shinji in his memories, playing with some kids in the sand, before he's abandoned by those kids as they leave for their mother. And then Shinji is alone. And in that feeling of loneliness, he wants to destroy his world, which is kind of like what's happening in the real world. Oh, it's a metaphor! Because this entire sequence is about a lot of things, really. And again, I don't know how productive it is for me to just sit here and tell you shot by shot what you're literally seeing. But it's a lot of Shinji at this low mental state of his, crashing out as everyone's hearts are connected and their walls are lowered to one another. Just like in the last 2 episodes of the show. Something I love about this sequence is that for a good chunk of it, we are trapped in the confinements of a small tram interior, bathed in burning red light. And within these confines, people attempt to reach out to Shinji, who rejects it every single time, still unable to bear the anxiety of pain that comes from trying to connect to someone else. But in this state, there's nowhere for Shinji or anyone to hide. With everyone's walls lowered, their deepest, darkest secrets and biggest insecurities are exposed for all to see. And this is shown straight away with the display of Misato and Kaji engaging in sex, much to Misato's shame and embarrassment. Shinji looks at them disgusted, an adult behavior that he and Asuka completely reject and mock. But to some level, I think it's because it's an act they don't really understand, both from being children and also because they are both too scared in their own unique ways to ever get to a point with another person where they could be that close. We saw a variation of this idea earlier in the show when Shinji and Asuka tried kissing and were disgusted by it, and it's an idea that is explored once again here. With a similar setup and visuals, Asuka goes to kiss Shinji, which Misato butts in to be like, nope, that's not for kids, don't do that. But before their lips meet, Asuka argues that he doesn't know anything about her, to which he retorts, yeah, because you won't let me in. And as she's accusing him of this, the camera and by extension Shinji's gaze begin to focus on her features. Her lips, her eyes, her collarbone, her legs. Both physically and emotionally, Asuka is always this thing he tries to use as a crutch for his needs, which she calls him out on, going, hey, yeah, I know what you fucking did at the start of the movie, you freak. And then within her pride, she looks him in the eyes and taunts him, telling him to do it again, only this time she'll watch, directly calling him out for doing these awful things in secret. Now he has nowhere to hide. It becomes this almost competition of two young brats who don't know how to treat each other, and in the process all they end up doing is hurt one another. Misato had a point. They're not adults. They just don't get it yet. Intimacy, sexual or not, is something that these two characters can't grasp. There's this really interesting line where Asuka says, which exacerbates how little a handle these young characters have on this aspect of their life. They're desperate and lonely and don't know how to navigate the cohesion of life. Then the three girls stare at Shinji as if to shame him. Then there's a complete tonal shift as we cut to a domestic scene in Misato's apartment with only Shinji and Asuka. She's wearing Misato's shirt as she does in the scenes when she is stepping into an adult role. And Shinji is also dressed very differently, almost like a father or a laid-back husband. As the two try to talk, it feels tense. It's like we're seeing our parents fight, which is amplified by this one shot of a scared Pen peeping around the corner. Like he is a little kid up past his bedtime, catching a glimpse of his parents fighting. And fight they do because almost instantly they start arguing. But it feels far removed from the typical squabbling back and forth we are accustomed to, as upon entering and declaring he wants to be with her forever, Asuka softly replies that all he does is hurt her. He's taken aback by this response, and then Asuka, full of hate in her eyes, goes into attack mode. She's not important to him, he just needs anyone to fill the hole in his heart. He just uses her again and again because he is too scared of his dad, of Misato, of Rei, so he always runs to Asuka, his easy option. And he doesn't really care about her, but again just uses her. Emotionally, sexually, selfishly, but never truthfully. And as she finally gets to retaliate proper, she pushes him to the ground as she tells him. She looks down upon Shinji, weak and writhing in pain, and with nothing but disgust across her face, she says, What's so captivating about this scene is that by this point we know these two characters so well and how volatile their dynamic with one another is. And in this moment they're all exploding with their deepest insecurities and fears. When Shinji enters at the top of the scene with them dressed like a couple in a house, it's like he's putting a band-aid on the situation, saying, hey, let's fix this, let's just be a happy pair who rely on each other and we can have one another and I'll have you and we can all be happy. And it's a moment for Asuka to finally stand up against Shinji and reject him and the way he treats her, which crumbles his already brittle grasp on the situation and his relationship with her, which is why, like a child, Shinji begins begging for help and throwing a tantrum. To which Asuka simply holds her ground and says no. And because of this, because he can't use Asuka anymore, he...
Why did my friend's sister show me this?
We're then given another overwhelming flashing set of images, which range from childlike drawings to people hurting one another, to all the memories of the original show at a rapid-fire hazy speed. In particular, I really like these shots where they reiterate Shinji getting close to another and then also rejecting that closeness. And all these shots are accompanied by Shinji stating that no one wants him, and so everyone, including himself, should just die. He's having this dialogue between himself and Rei.
And like, I love you, Rei, but you're really not the best person for Shinji to be having this chat with.
And so he asks the question that he answered at the end of the series. Is it okay for me to be here? To which no response is given.
Poor boy's vocal cords, oh my god.
What happens next is one of the most famous scenes from the series, and for good reason. The song Komm süßer Tod, which translates from German into Come Sweet Death, begins to play. The fun irony of the song is that despite its title and the visuals that accompany it, it's this kind of upbeat pop song. If you didn't listen to the lyrics, you could have a real jive here. But tune your ears into the words and you'll find a text that is quite defeatist in tone. It discusses the regret of realizing too late that the love of those around you is more important than anything else, and that with nothing but sadness and guilt inside them, it's probably best to end it all and leave forever. That it should all come. It can be hard to piece this together when watching because you'll be distracted by all the visuals, but it feels pretty easy to track these lyrics onto Shinji's experience, realizing he has shut out everyone around him and feeling like his only option is to let it all end. And as these lyrics hit our ears, we see every character in this world die. Not in a literal sense, but their physical form is exploded into Fanta as everyone's souls are merged into one. What's always left me with a feeling of dread from this scene though is how the myriad of rays who pop up to turn everyone into orange juice transform before everyone's eyes into the person that they love the most. And so it makes everyone's submission to this death have this euphoric, seductive feeling to it, and I've always just found it really creepy and unsettling, just like when it happened earlier with Shinji. The sequence does make way for Gendo though, who finally after this whole time gets what he wants, to see his wife once again. I think Gendo is overlooked a bit as a character. He's always sort of written off as the worst dad ever. Which is true, but it's this one scene where we get this rare glimpse inside of his character that I find so fascinating. He says to Yui, which is exactly the same sentiment shared by his son. All the characters around him tell him everything Shinji has been hearing the whole show. He is running away, he is putting up walls, and then he is eaten by Unit 1. And yeah, it feels good to see him finally defeated, but those little bits of dialogue we got just before his death are so fascinating. It's this super interesting last minute bit of introspective that draws a comparison between father and son and gives some explanation for his attitude throughout the series. He was afraid of hurting Shinji and letting love into his life, so he always kept Shinji at arm's length, which in result led Shinji to turn out the exact same as him, putting up walls, running away, not believing he can be loved by others. Again, it's small and very quick, but something I find so interesting and isn't really explored again until decades later in the last Rebuild movie. Guys, I'll be real, I don't think we're getting to the Rebuild movies in this video. Anyway, some more sexual imagery, some birthing imagery, because the world and people are being reborn, so there is a big vagina and a womb like an egg, and the entire world screams as their souls merge, and like, what a unique visual, man. Just, oh my god, how do you come up with this shit? And then at once, everyone's thoughts are overlapping each other as every single unique thought blends together at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and is the most overwhelming the entire series has ever been, and it just doesn't stop, and it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going until once more Shinji is given the option from what appears to be his friends to run away, to give up, to find peace and relief through merging with another person, to hide from the pain of his life. And then we see a real human eye open and cut to an empty movie theater. It's at this point of the film where I'm like, oh yeah, this is the coolest shit ever made. The entire next segment is all shot in live action, which I think is what remains of an earlier plan to have a way bigger chunk of this movie be in live action that was ultimately cut but left on the Blu-ray, so check it out. We see water, the sun, a city skyline, and its streets. As we move through the vignettes of this new world, Shinji realizes that this is a place where he doesn't exist, which is why it opens on the shot of an empty cinema. Something that doesn't really click unless you watch it in a movie theater and see the environment around yourself mirrored right back at you, only instead lacking a single soul. In contrast to the almost horror-like tone that preceded this sequence, we are now bathed in these beautiful dreamlike feelings, as the soothing tone of Rei's voice guides Shinji through what he's experiencing, all accompanied by Jesus' Blessed Minor Fraud by Baroque composer Bach. The arrangement we hear is actually played a lot slower than how it's usually performed, which helps fuel the ethereal feeling of the scene. This sequence, I think, is about Shinji finally getting what he wanted and being confronted with the cold hard truth. A world without him, a world without people, a world without the pain of life isn't a world worth living. Hey, that guy flipped off the camera! What the hell? Life is painful and incredibly difficult. Connecting to another person to any degree can be incredibly hard and often ends with heartbreak or anger or pain or grief. But that doesn't mean it's not worth living, shoving yourself deep down inside and putting your shields up to the world around you. You can't keep running away. Life, even with all of its pain, is worth living. The End of Evangelion's message is inherently optimistic, and it's a message I think people, myself included, sometimes lose because a lot of the movie is painted in this coat of dread and despair. But that isn't what it's saying in its conclusion. As Rei and then Kaworu guide Shinji through this new reality he wished for, he realizes this isn't what he wanted at all. All the bad stuff in his life he wanted to run away from because it was difficult and frightening. But if he ran away from it, then he wouldn't have been there to experience life. If he undoes everyone being merged together, it will mean the fear of being hurt or hurting another will return, but it will be a real and genuine feeling, and so it's something that he decides in the end is worth it. There's this beautiful long shot that overlooks the trio as the floor underneath them slowly morphs and fades from a farmland to eventually a city full of people once again, just as Shinji realizes he still wants to see all the people that were in his life. Despite everything he's done to them and everything they've done to him, he wants to see them again. And just as Shinji realizes this, we see a big group picture of everyone. Some are smiling, some are bothered by each other, some are eyeing off others, some are even hidden. But through this picture, we see what life is all about. People and the relationships that connect us to them, despite the fears, despite the risks. And as Shinji realizes this, the orchestra flares as the giant Rei begins to disintegrate piece by piece, and Shinji erupts from his eye and does this massive wolf howl like he's got the dog in him. It's this insanely cathartic conclusion to Shinji's character arc, which shouldn't even work because we've already seen him complete it in the show, but it just does because it feels so different whilst also reaching the same conclusion. It may not be as in your face as everyone looking right into the camera and saying congratulations, but Shinji finding his will to live despite the crushing anxieties that face him, to the backdrop of the most gorgeously inventive and creative visuals, it's just so beautifully well done. And it's the cherry on top of the cake that we get to hear Yui say to Shinji, finally, Shinji gets to meet his mother again, who asks him one last time if he'll be okay. And even though he doesn't know where to find happiness, even though he knows that he'll run into the same conclusions he always does, he wants to stay here and be real and be himself and experience life. And so with Shinji finally getting to see her one final time, Yui, inside of the Evangelion, flings out into space as an eternal reminder that humanity once lived. The End of Evangelion is such a spectacular movie. Not only does it brilliantly conclude the series, but it does so with some of the most intense, unique visual imagery ever put to paper, while giving all of its characters a definitive ending, having bombastic action that was lacking from the original finale, and also redoing the main character's perfect conclusion in an equally perfect way. On the surface, it seems to be a very dark, depressing movie, and it's certainly not a fun watch. But at its core, it has this beautifully personal and optimistic message, all in the same key of the originals. It is truly one of the best animated films ever made, and I think maybe just one of the best films ever made. There is no other movie that I can think of that is like The End of Evangelion, and for that, it is wholly unique and deserving of every bit of praise that it is given. But it's not quite finished. After a final title card, we cut to a beach amongst the aftermath of the movie's plot. We see Rei's giant severed head, a mass-produced Ava unit, Misato's necklace, and then the moon. So we know we'll be okay. We then see Shinji and Asuka, separated, no longer merged as one. Shinji turns over and then sees Rei one final time, very akin to the first time he saw her, but this time it's like this one final goodbye from his mother and his friend. He then proceeds to sit up and look down at Asuka. Instantly, he begins to choke her. Amidst the calm crashing waves of a glistening red sea, he strangles her, until Asuka tenderly caresses his cheek, and so he stops, and he lets go of her neck and begins to cry. Asuka eventually looks down at him and says, And then the end. Boom. Lights up if you're in a theater, because remember the credits were in the middle of the movie, and just like that, you experience whiplash as you're thrown out of this movie and back into reality. What a stark, harsh ending to the series.
The first time I saw this, I just couldn't understand why Shinji did this.
After his incredibly happy and optimistic ending in the show, where he learned it was okay for him to be in this world despite hating himself, why does he instantly try to end her life?
There are no official answers, which the thought of I think is kind of stupid anyway, because it's art, man. It means what you think it means.
But the most popular theory or read is that Shinji was trying to confirm that people could feel things again, which is why he tries to enact pain upon Asuka.
But I don't totally buy that. And so in this last viewing in particular, I thought a lot about how these two endings are side by side. And to me, what I think this ending is about is that in fiction we have stories, right? And in these stories, characters go on these emotional arcs as they are sent out into an unfamiliar world and then they return to where they once were, only now changed. I think we sometimes like to think of these characters as finished or upgraded, like their journey has leveled them up and now they are flawless. But that's not how people work. We're constantly growing, failing, getting a bit better, and then falling all the way back down before picking ourselves up again. It's what Misato's speech in the movie is all about.
Here we see the aftermath of Shinji having taken the first step into bettering himself in life. The congratulations isn't a "hey Shinji, you're fixed," but rather congratulations on taking your first step. Yes, you belong to be here, but you still have to work on yourself. You have to work at life. So when he does go back to the real world, he's not magically an improved, better person. He is still the same guy who did all those awful things. And when he sees Asuka, she still makes him feel all the awful emotions he felt previously. Which is why he makes his first mistake by trying to hurt her, which she retaliates to only by lovingly stroking his cheek, as if to say, even despite all the pain he inflicts and the troubles he carries, he is still worthy of love and connection to another person. And realizing what he has done, in addition to the newfound revelation for his life going forward, he breaks down in shame, realizing how much work he has left to do.
The end. Did I do it? I've just talked and talked about this show and movie so much, but did I accomplish what I set out to do? I feel like I yapped so much and yet said so little. Like I didn't even get to talk about all the Christianity imagery and how some people think Anno thought it was in there just because it looked cool, but some people think that doesn't matter because it's how you read it. And I didn't even really talk about Ritsuko and how she's in love with Gendo and how she pathetically falls in love with him even though he just uses her with what we see on screen and off screen sexually. There's even these cool details like she doesn't wear makeup when he's out of town. Or how the entire staff at NEV are always talking about budgetary issues and how Misato doesn't make very good money, which is why she can't afford nice meals and is always using this NEV alarm clock. Or maybe she does make good money and just wastes it all on these good clothes and this car. Or in episode 7 when the rival robotic manufacturing guy quips about how the Avas are acting like hysterical women, which is like foreshadowing for the fact that there are mothers inside the Avas. All the way the show thoroughly examines the way men and women interact with one another. And I know nowadays we don't necessarily see things as being in one of those two boxes, but it's this very interesting thematic thread that is all throughout the series. And I didn't get to talk about the manga, which is written by the character designer of the show and took 20 years to finish and has these different interpretations of the characters that has this different yet just as beautifully optimistic ending. All the 4 Rebuild movies which start out by remaking the story and then just go in a completely different direction with another different yet just as equally optimistic finale. All of which I did watch and read in preparation for this video, by the way. I even played some of the video games, most of which are Japanese exclusive, and like I know a bit of Japanese but not enough to understand fully what's going on in them. And at the end of the day, did I even answer the question? Why is everybody so obsessed with Evangelion? I can't answer that from just my viewpoint. I'm just one guy. And what if I've read the series entirely wrong and I get clowned on by the people who love the show way more than I do and have read every single English translated script, book, and interview and just know every detail about the show and just, what am I even trying to do here?
What am I doing here? You're trying to explain your feelings through a parody of the ending of the series.
That's so stupid! You're the one who wrote it, aren't you?
So why did you even make this video then? I don't know. No, I just wanted to make a video on Evangelion because I couldn't stop thinking about it. That's so stupid. The internet's already filled up with enough of those. I know that. And it wasn't even an easy endeavor, was it? Of course it wasn't easy. These are never easy to make. They take months and months of my life and they somehow never get easier. The thing I'm feeling the most right now is I'm really scared. This isn't really tricky to write. This is so hard. Some parts of the script feel good, but a lot of it just feels like a mess. At the start, I was excited, and then in the middle, I was like, this is so long, I actually want to die. And it has not gone well. But at least I get to connect to people through them.
LT, you might want to not put videos out about your terrible opinions.
I fucking love them Evo stamps, you bumbling. It's because of haters like you that Takahashi was never around.
Leave your libcock rhetoric out first.
Twinkie Brit playing a cat girl gets addicted to the golden.
Look at all you fucking unappreciative bitches. What do you want the game to do, suck your dick? This is a terrible bit. I don't like you.
But you're only choosing to look at the bad ones. There are so many lovely people who say nice things too. I know, but it's just overwhelming sometimes. Then why do you keep making them? All those videos on all those wildly different topics? What's the point? I just want to make videos about things I like. You could have been the Twilight Princess guy or the Barbie guy. Instead, you're just some guy. I know, but you could have stuck to one thing and had more success at it. I don't care about that though. Shut up! Despite it all, you still care. You still keep making these videos all these years in. Yeah, but I've never talked about something like this before. I'm so scared to get it wrong. Scared bled, bro, shut up. Just start one word at a time. You can't expect to get it perfect on your first try. I can't draw very well. Yeah, no shit, you suck. Which is why you make these things instead, isn't it? But there's so much work to do, and I don't know if I can do it, and I don't know if I can do it well, and what if it doesn't work? And what if this bit right now doesn't work? What if it's all for nothing? Hey guys, what's up? Snugboy here for part 312 of Let's Play Evangelion 2 for the PS2. Now make sure you smash that subscribe button and hit the bell, because we're about to have some pretty epic gaming time up ahead. And without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, this shit is ass. What would you say is your favorite episode? For me, I'd have to say Asuka Strikes. Yeah, I just think I don't want to interrupt. I think what's really good. I just don't understand how you could like anyone could fathom that opinion. No, I just think the colors are really good. I think what they do. How do you wake up one day and you think, oh, that is my favorite art direction, which is it kind of varies from episode to episode. I think seriously, the thing about a podcast is you're supposed to like see other people's different opinions, but this is the most fucking stupid brained opinion I've seen in my entire life. I don't understand. And although some people kind of ship them together, to me they're like brother and sister, you know. Maybe brother and sister make out with each other, but yeah. It's just a good episode. I think direct correlates really strong. Are you rage bait? Are you trying to rage bait? I like that it's sort of taking out place of Tokyo. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another music reaction. Now, you know me, I played the violin for 6 years, and let's react to some music today. Okay, gonna have to stop it right there. So, what I'm getting from the first few seconds of just listening to it just then for the first time is that I'm definitely hearing notes from a scale. Now what notes they're using and what scale they're borrowing from, I'd have to listen to a bit more to figure out, but yeah, that's definitely what I'm picking up. And then he walks into the hospital and jacks off in front of her. Original joke! It's an original joke! I came up with it myself! It's an original joke! I've got a Netflix special! Hey guys, spend a day with me in Tokyo, Japan on my way to go see an Evangelion store. Don't forget your Famichiki Hitotsu onegaishimasu. Wow, as you can see, there was so much merch at the store. Let me know what your favorites were. This content is so cool and relatable. I get it. These are possible different versions of this video and me. Does that mean there's a version out there somewhere where I'm not bogged down in my worries about getting this entire thing right? We don't care about this being the right video to make? Is there a version of me that can definitively answer why is everybody so obsessed with Evangelion? Hey guys, today I'm going to ask all my friends and some random strangers why they like Evangelion so much, so let's go. Do you like the show?
I love it.
Really?
Yeah.
I have this weird relationship with Evangelion where I don't know if I love it or hate it, but I've watched it about 4 times.
Do you like Evangelion? I guess so.
I don't just like Evangelion. I love Evangelion.
I don't like it. I love it. Yeah.
You love it?
I love it.
Yeah, no, I just so happen to like Neon Genesis Evangelion, or NGE.
I really like Evangelion.
I would say it's in my top 2 or 3.
it's definitely up there.
You tweeted that you were going to interview people at PAX, watch Evangelion. I thought, you know what? Snug's a good friend. I've never seen Evangelion. I'll watch the entirety of Evangelion in 1 week.
It was like 4 days, really.
It was about 4 days. And I watched the whole anime, and you know what? I loved it. I fucking loved it.
From Canada, yeah, that's where I was born, from my mother, kind of like Shinji was. That's why I related to him, I think, instantly, because like we both came out of our mothers.
Well, I did watch it in my formative years when I was quite young and a little depressed, like 12-year-old who loved anime.
So you're like, I'm literally Shinji?
No, I was like, I'm literally Rei.
Oh.
I have a tattoo of Rei on my thigh right here.
Whoa.
Rei is bae.
For me, I mean, I first watched EVA like last year. I group watched it with a friend, and I'm like, okay, this is all right. And then I got to kind of more of the crazy shit that was happening, and I'm like, damn, wow, this shit's like kind of addicting. I kind of want to find out more and more.
It was the first ever anime that I actually watched, and it is wholly, totally responsible for my love of what I dub mechanime. Now I collect, Tau in Warhammer 40,000, which are all about mech battle suits. I love Appleseed, which is another anime, mecha battle suits. There's so much. I really like it.
It was definitely one of like the most intricate action animes that I think I'd ever seen. Like I wasn't super into like Gundam as a whole, but there was something about Evangelion that I think the existentialism of it, and I don't know how to describe it, but it always felt wrong. And I think I kind of loved that about it.
The first experience I had with Evangelion was actually even earlier. I spent a lot of time at the library as a kid, and I also remember picking up the first big-ass volume of the Evangelion manga. And to me, reading that as a kid was like, it felt like I was reading something I shouldn't be reading because it was very mature compared to what I was used to, especially when I reached the scene where like Shinji comes to Rei's apartment and she walks out of her room completely naked. And I was like, what? They could do that?
It's kind of cool. It's got, big robots, depressed teenagers.
Do you think more shows should have big robots and depressed teenagers?
Absolutely.
If you wanted to do anything revolving around anime, or you just were interested in anime, especially in the mid-2010s, you would need to know what Eva was, because that was one of like the canon things, the way that literature can always revert back to referencing Aristotle or Shakespeare. Anime fans can always go back to referencing Evangelion. Like you would just be in a random forum and then someone would bring up a hospital scene, and if you didn't know what Evangelion was, you would be very confused. And I was.
It was one of the first animes I ever watched. Been watching it for literally decades now, so it teaches me something new each time. That's the crazy part. It's like a juxtaposition, like you just see so much more symbolism and imagery each time.
It is an anime that I was always intrigued by, and then one of my local friends, she is like the biggest Eva nut, and she was like, I will freaking sit down and watch this with you. And we watched pretty much the whole original series like on Netflix together, and it was a time. But yeah, I kind of just sat there going like, what the hell did I watch? What does this all mean? This doesn't make any sense. I am mad, but I don't know why I'm mad. What is going on?
Funny story with how I got into this series was my friends wanted to go see End of Eva in theaters, and my one friend is like huge on Evangelion. It's like his favorite, I think, show ever. He was like, do you guys want to watch this with me? And I was like, how much of the series do I need to have seen for this to make any sense at all? And he was like, the whole thing is 10 hours. And I was like, all right. So the next 2 days I spent basically just watching Evangelion, and like, I think it was like 4 hours after I finished the final 2 episodes, I then went to go see End of Evangelion and lose my mind on the big screen, which was cool.
You watched the movie like 12 hours ago. I want to know your fresh opinion.
I watched End of Evangelion, and I kind of realized after, like, that felt like less like a movie and more like an art piece. I know he was very depressed in making Evangelion, and I can see that here. And then End of Evangelion, I can see it even more so.
Did you like when Misato kissed a 14-year-old? My favorite thing is before we watched End of Evangelion, he messaged me and goes, why does everyone say Misato's a pedophile? She's like my favorite character.
The one thing that kind of frustrates me is there's no sense of stakes outside of the exposition that they kind of give you. So they'll be like, oh, the angels are coming, world's at stake, and I get that, but you rarely actually see any people from the city. And I guess there's probably some sort of metaphorical allegory you can kind of like connect that with knowing Evangelion, but...
I sleep with this in my bedroom.
It was like mid-high school I watched this. I think I was like 16. Yeah, I definitely had like all the memes in my head of like, oh, Shinji getting the robot. It was one of the most popular, like, well-regarded anime. So I'm like, I'm probably gonna like it. Instantly, I loved it. Starts off a little slow, but then like, I feel like when Asuka was introduced, I feel like the ball like instantly starts rolling and like you understand what's happening in the show. And I just love the conclusion. I think End of Evangelion is amazing.
I mean, you know, they're kids. They're kids piloting these big fucking robots. I'm sorry, you'll probably have to bleep that.
Swearing's allowed.
Sorry.
The C word.
It's not right.
They wouldn't say that in Evangelion.
They wouldn't. They're just children.
They're just kids.
But I think that was a really interesting thing about it as well. It's like, you know, the only people who can save the world are kids. Maybe that's like a representation of like the future.
Are you saying that we should be shoving 14-year-olds in robots right now?
Yes. It would be funny to me.
I watched it when I was really young, I want to say, like in my early teens, so very formative years. So at the time, I was too young to understand a lot of the sort of more mature adult overtones. I was just like, cool, big robot fights. But then as you grow up and you mature in hindsight and you watch it again and again and again, you start to pick up on everything else. And I feel like it just got richer over time.
And the first time I watched it, I hated it. Oh my God, I hated it so much. I can't really tell you why. I think I just thought it was boring. I think my favorite episodes were the last two of the original series, which I feel like that's a hot take. I feel like people don't like those as much because they get all in his head, but I really liked that. That was really formative for me. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it better than EOE. That's just my hot take. You don't have to agree with me.
And I finished the whole show and I was like, that was crazy, kind of a blur, and then I just stopped. I didn't watch End of Eva until probably like 3 or 4 years later. If you asked me at the time, you're like, okay, break it down for me. I couldn't do that, but on a like an emotional level, I felt like it was a resolution. Like I didn't feel like I needed more. Granted, I'm glad there is more because End of Eva is amazing and probably my favorite piece of Evangelion media. Like it felt very conclusive and final, which was why I didn't like feel the desire to go out and watch the movie right away.
Which character, most memorable, favorite, which one stands out to you the most?
The main thing for me is Shinji, right? It's hard not to be, right?
Probably Shinji. He's just relatable, bro. I too am depressed and just don't want to be here anymore. It's just very relatable.
All right, this is gonna be basic. I would pick Shinji because felt like when I was watching, like, wow, Shinji's kind of like me. In like the worst toxic ways possible. It's like it's just struggles and just wanting to connect with others. It's like, damn, I felt that, you know, as a person who kind of got also struggles with, you know, connecting with people. It really spoke to me.
For me, that would have to be Shinji pretty assuredly. And I think it's really interesting the way Shinji's the main character and he's supposed to be like the quote unquote hero. But I like how this series is almost like too real in the fact that when you ask this 14-year-old child to get into a robot and like fight to save the world, that he's not like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna do this. Instead, he's just like, no, I don't want to. This is terrifying. I don't understand why I have to be the one to do this. I mean, at 14 years old, I just remember being like, I don't even understand my own thoughts and feelings and what's going on in my body and my head. Like, I can't even imagine having that extra responsibility, that like enormous responsibility also being added on top of everything and just being expected to go for it and just be able to move on with your life.
Hot take, Shinji. I love Shinji because I mean he's just a kid. He's just relatable. Not that I'm like a kid, but you know what I mean? He's like a person. And a lot of people get on him like, oh, he's such a coward and he ruins everything and he's such a crybaby. Like, yeah, he is. But when I was first watching Evangelion, he's the only one I related to. I guess I was like a depressed little weeb or something. And I was like, he's crying just like me. So a lot of the Shinji that I put in my skits, that's a lot of me. You guys are so mean to me all the time. Sadly.
And I always felt really proud that the only characters I I was into were adults. It's like, I love Misato. She's so slay obsessed.
I always like Misato.
Everybody's saying Misato today.
She's just a mad dog. Like, she is.
She's goated.
In my old age, actually, I'd like to say Misato. If there's any Misatos listening out there, hit me up.
And if there's any pens out there, hit me up at 042. That's a penguin. I'm gonna fuck a penguin.
Pen. What the hell? Why? He's just there? He's never explained? What? Why is there a sentient penguin? You know? Like, what?
I feel like when Asuka was introduced, I love her. She's my favorite character. I really like her bluntness, I think, and her confidence. Like everyone in Shinji's life, I feel like they're not responding or like giving him criticism on why he's feeling this way. I feel like Asuka is the one character who actually is like honest and is, you know, like a bit of a bitch. But I think that's what she brings this energy to the show that I think was lacking up until that point.
In your most popular video, Asuka sings Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Do you think Asuka enjoyed the FNAF movie? I feel like she did. I feel like she liked Josh Hutcherson. I feel like she looked at the edits, but she wouldn't tell anyone that she did. When Matt Pat showed up, she like really loudly went, "Guys, look, it's Matt Pat!" She was probably shush and she was like, "I'm just pointing it out so you all know. I wasn't sure if you guys noticed that." And maybe Shinji likes it, and she's like, "You're so stupid. Why do you even like the FNAF movie? Of course you'd like the FNAF movie. How about you go kill yourself in a robot or something? Oh, right. You already did that because your mom's dead in a robot." Or whatever.
But I also really loved Kaji to a point where a friend of mine bought it's like an L-shaped body pillow of him where his arms like this. It's fucked up, I'm sorry! It was a gift!
Was it?
I really liked Kaoru. He's very unusual because he enters the series and he's like very much like the face of the enemy, but then he's so kind to Shinji and he sort of provides Shinji with that affection that he's craving. He was very much like a character that I feel like just sticks with me because he has that sort of mystique to him.
But I think over time, I started to like Shinji's father, surprisingly. Not because he's a good character, right? But he was written really well and he was executed really well. And he is compelling a lot of what makes the entire story of Neon Genesis Evangelion great. Well, it's like any great villain. The consequences of their actions impact the good guys around them, and we get to see the growth and development of the good guys. And, you know, obviously in this story arc, in this world, that villain, that bad guy that is acted really well, written really well, is the driving force behind the show that we love.
The other character that stood out for me once a few times, which doesn't actually get any or much screen time at all, is Shinji's mum. Her soul's there, right? Her soul's there, but yeah, we don't actually see her much at all.
Sorry, that's inaccurate. I don't know if you've seen the anime, but actually Rei is just like kind of Shinji's mom there already, so she's in the whole anime, as well as Unit 01. She's also Shinji's mom. So sorry, actually, you guys don't know anything about Evangelion. Here you go. Bye.
I don't remember Shinji's mom having blue hair.
Whoa! Animes come and go, right? Why do you think this one, 30 years later, like people still have this reverence for it?
I think it's just still relevant. It still looks really, really good. It's still got like just a really strong story. I feel like a lot of anime that comes out nowadays, and there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff, but no, there's some good stuff. There's some good stuff.
Yeah.
Everything that comes in between is either like degenerate or boring. Evangelion's just timeless, you know? Like when you make something really, really good, it'll kind of last forever.
I don't think they looked at it as like let's make an anime for TV that people can watch and sit down and like watch again the next week. I think they sat down and they're like, I want to put myself in this. It's so much more like I am making something that means a lot to me. It means a lot to the artists here. Fuck the fans because I'm telling it. That's what the movie feels like. It's like, I don't give a fuck about what other people say. I'm trying to say something.
There's definitely the factor that they've kept it in the public eye with the rebuilds. Some things get to the point of popularity that the popularity can self-perpetuate itself. Like it becomes such a point of cultural symbolism that is so easy to reference and bring up in discussion that it just it just sticks around.
I think it's because it was already popular. When people were migrating to more online, larger spaces, it was nice to have sort of a lingua franca to meld everything together. Like, I might not have seen every anime that you've seen, but I've seen this really popular one that I know you've seen, so we can talk about that. Also, it's got really cool robots. Robots are awesome.
I think it's like Akira, it's iconic. It just has, I think, that right combination that makes it stand out from the rest. Mechanime in and of itself is not unique, but they did Mechanime the best. If you look at Gundam, for example, I almost feel like there's too much focus on all of the fighting and not enough on the humanity of the pilots in the mechs. I think NGE strikes that balance.
I think it was coming out in a very formative time of anime. It was coming out at a similar time as Akira, which has obviously also had a very big impact on anime and even just media in general. That Akira slide, iconic. It was boundary pushing. I mean, they weren't afraid to have these shots of these kids just like struggling, just so depressed. Everyone in the show, all the adults, are just so fucking depressed. And I think there's something about that melancholy mixed with like epic fighting that just like resonates with a lot of people. The art style's beautiful, the characters are beautiful. It's just ageless.
It's unfortunate situation of them running out of money, I feel like was kind of this really long-term blessing in disguise, where the fans were just like, we want this resolution. So there was kind of that obsession and that never went away. And so I think because things was left so vague and there were so many question marks. So as what happens, fan bases will naturally try to theorize. They try to figure out like, what is the definitive meaning of everything and the timeline and all that kind of stuff. I think that's probably what sort of kept it alive. On top of that, it's just like really cool animation, plot twists that just blow your mind, and just big robots fighting monsters, you know, because that never gets old.
Something about the psychological element this series takes with the characters, I feel like it's not usually this explicitly dark and, I don't want to say confrontational, but to address all of these like super complex, traumatizing issues all in like one series that's billing itself as this like mecha anime. We're gonna go like stop the angels and we're gonna save the world. Instead it's like, no, like every character in this series needs therapy and none of them can afford it.
It's iconic. It really developed a cult following, and it was one of those things that really challenged a few different big topics, you know, that hit. And also, we have to be real, okay? They confused the fuck out of us the first couple of times, right? A lot of people are like, yeah, I get it. No one really got it.
Yeah. I wanted to kiss that penguin the whole time, I'll be real.
Right? Love Pen.
Hey.
The time that it came out and what it was aiming to achieve and this kind of story it was trying to tell and the issues it was sort of tackling and the way that it went about it kind of wasn't really done in that way at the time. So it kind of reinforced it as a classic of that era.
It was one of those first big anime that really defined anime in the West. It's like Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Eva, like those like kind of like the big three, you feel me? And not only that, you know, obviously had such high praise and just lauded as one of the greatest pieces of media of all time.
I think it just really touched upon such important themes, and it did it like so well. As a society, as we like get more and more disconnected from each other, everyone experiences more and more isolation, and ultimately that can lead to like lack of social connection and depression. Evangelion just like presents it in such an interesting and nuanced way that like I feel like it just continues to resonate with people more and more as we get more and more addicted to social media and stuff. I think it definitely resonates.
Which I think makes Evangelion interesting because it has so much surface level appeal just through its aesthetics and initial premise that it's become hugely popular, and then everybody gets into it and they have this experience where they finish, they're like, I don't know how to feel about this, and it's like fresh and exciting for them because a lot of people watching Evangelion for the first time have only seen like stuff where it's pretty obvious what you're supposed to take away from it emotionally and thematically.
Fuck you. I am changed because of that anime. I will say that. Fuck you in like a positive way. Thank you.
And big boobs?
So it was possible. Of course it was, you idiot. It was possible the whole time. You put too much pressure on yourself. But what if I got things wrong or missed some important thematic thing? If, what if you go to with the fucking source, huh? Do you ever think about that? I don't like saying things like that about myself.
You don't have to, but you do have to believe in yourself, which deep down, you always did. Yeah, why else would you spend all your money on a bunch of plushies and dresses to wear? I don't know if any of that was worth it to anyone. Yes, you do. Well, maybe it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Maybe I should just keep making these videos for myself. Maybe I should just keep going from topic to topic, following whatever it is I want. And if I'm lucky, people will show up to watch. How many panes of glass do I own? Did this bit go on too long? What, the video or this end parody bit? Either. Who cares? Did you have fun making it? Yeah.
Congratulations.
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 Thanks, guys.